They told me the machines were dead. That was the exact word the supervisor used when he handed me the keys. Dead. Like they were animals that stopped breathing, not steel and wires that used to chew through metal all night. But the moment I stepped inside Hollow Ridge Factory, I knew something inside that building didn't agree. The gate behind me closed with a long, tired screech. Not loud, not dramatic, just exhausted, like it had been opening and closing for too many years and had finally given up on pretending. I stood there for a moment, flashlight in my hand, staring at the shape of the factory. It was huge, too huge. A black wall of broken windows and rusted steel stretching into the fog, the kind of place that looked like it should not still exist on any working map. My first thought was simple. Why would anyone leave something this big behind? My second thought came immediately after. Why does it still feel occupied? I turned on my radio. "Night shift guard reporting in," I said. My voice sounded too normal for a place like this. "First patrol starting now." Only static answered me. That was fine. Radios did that sometimes in old industrial zones. At least that's what I told myself. I started walking. The main entrance door was already unlocked. That was my first open loop. I remember pausing with my hand on the metal handle, just staring at it. The lock should have been sealed. The supervisor specifically said, "Everything is locked tight. Nothing moves in there." But the door gave slightly under my push, like it was expecting me. Inside, the air changed immediately. It wasn't just cold, it was still. Like sound had been removed from the world and replaced with pressure. My flashlight beam moved across the floor. Dust, old pallets, rusted carts frozen in place like they had stopped mid-thought years ago. Then I heard it. A soft metallic clink. Somewhere deep inside the factory. I froze. The sound didn't repeat. Only silence again. I exhaled slowly, telling myself it was just settling metal. Old buildings do that. They shift. They complain. I took a step forward. Then another clank. Closer this time. Not random. Rhythmic. Like something moving in a pattern. I raised my flashlight higher, sweeping across the conveyor hall. Empty machines lined both sides of the corridor. Giant presses, cutting arms, conveyor belts that should have been dead forever. But something felt wrong about the way they stood. Not broken. Waiting. That was when I noticed the first detail I didn't want to notice. Dust patterns on the floor. They weren't random. They were disturbed in straight lines, like something had been dragged recently. My radio crackled. A single burst of static, then something almost like a whisper. I lifted it fast. "Hello," I said. Nothing. Then the whisper came again. Not words, just breath. Slow. Close. Behind me. I spun instantly. Flashlight cut through empty space. Nothing there. But my skin reacted before my mind did. You know that feeling when someone is standing too close behind you, even when no one is there? That. I forced myself to laugh softly. "Bad wiring," I muttered. "Just bad wiring." But my voice didn't convince me. I moved deeper into the factory. That's when I found the supervisor's log room. Door slightly open. That was the second open loop. Inside, everything was neat, too neat, like someone still worked there. A desk, a chair, a blinking terminal with no signal. And a logbook. I flipped it open. The last entry was dated 3 years ago. But the handwriting, it didn't look like someone stopping work. It looked like someone interrupted mid-sentence. One line caught my attention. "Shift continues even after shutdown. Do not let it notice you watching." My throat tightened. I looked around the room again. The ceiling light flickered once, then stabilized. That was when I noticed something else. A second chair, facing the first one, like someone had been sitting there recently. But the seat wasn't dusty. I stepped back slowly. The logbook fell shut on its own. A soft click echoed in the room. I left immediately. Fast walk now, not running, not yet. Running means fear has already won. The conveyor haul felt longer on the way back. I swear the distance increased. That shouldn't be possible, but the factory didn't feel like it respected normal rules. Halfway down the corridor, I saw it. A light, flickering at the far end. No power should have been active. But there it was. Yellow, weak, pulsing like a heartbeat. I didn't want to go closer, but I did anyway. Every step felt louder than it should have been. Then I heard it again. The clanking. This time, multiple sources. Not one machine. Many, but all slightly out of sync. Like a factory trying to remember how to be a factory. I reached the end of the hall and turned the corner. And I stopped breathing. The machines were moving. Not fully, just slightly. Conveyor belts twitching forward an inch, stopping, then repeating. Press arms lifting a few centimeters, then lowering. No power source. No visible control. But movement. Slow, patient. Like muscle memory. My flashlight shook in my hand. I whispered, "This is not possible." And that was when the elevator bell rang. Once, somewhere deeper in the factory. That was the third open loop. I didn't even know there was an elevator. But the sound had come from below me. Very clearly. I stepped back instinctively. The machines responded. All at once, they stopped. Completely. As if they had been caught doing something they weren't supposed to do. Silence dropped so hard it felt physical. Then the radio in my pocket turned on by itself. Static. Then a voice. Calm. Soft. Like reading instructions. Night shift protocol active. Please proceed to lower levels. I pulled the radio out fast. Who is this? Identify yourself. No answer. Only that same calm repetition. Proceed to lower levels. My flashlight beam drifted across the machines again. And I noticed something new. Fresh oil. Still wet. Leading toward a door I hadn't seen before. Half hidden behind a press unit. I didn't want to go. But curiosity is a dangerous thing in places like this. It makes you walk before you decide. The door was heavy, metal, no label. It opened without resistance. Behind it was an elevator. Old industrial type, rusted cage doors. And the button, already glowing. Waiting. That was the fourth open loop. I didn't press it. It lit up anyway. The elevator started moving. Somewhere below me. Coming up. Slow. Deliberate. Like it already knew I was there. I stepped back into the corridor. The machine started again. Not randomly this time. They were turning toward me. All of them. Slight rotations of metal joints. Conveyor belts aligning. Press arms lifting into position. Like a factory preparing to watch. My radio whispered again. Closer this time. Not through the speaker, but around me. Don't let it complete the cycle. I don't know why I listened, but I ran. Vast. Back through the hall, past the log room, past the flickering lights. The factory behind me began to hum. Not loud, but alive. Like something waking up after a long sleep. I reached the main corridor. and saw something I didn't understand. My footprints in the dust were gone, like I had never walked there, and in their place were others, fresh, walking in the opposite direction, slow, matching mine, following me. I didn't stop to look again. I just ran, and behind me, the machines continued moving. Not loudly, not violently, just steadily, like a system resuming work that had never truly stopped. When I finally reached the entrance door, I slammed it open and stepped into the cold night air. I should have felt relief, but I didn't, because from inside the factory, I heard something new. A single voice, clear, close, right behind the metal wall. It said only one thing: first night completed, and my shift had only just begun. The footsteps started after I stopped believing in them. That's the strange part I keep replaying in my mind. I was standing outside Hollow Ridge Factory, hands still shaking from the first night, telling myself it was over, that I had imagined the movement, the whisper, the machines that seemed too awake. Then I heard it again. Inside, a slow, heavy step, echoing through metal corridors. I froze before I even realized I was listening, because no one was supposed to be inside. Not tonight, not ever. The radio in my pocket stayed silent this time. That silence made it worse. I looked at the factory door like it had changed shape overnight. Same rusted frame, same cracked glass panel, but now it felt like an eye that was already watching me. I pushed it open. The air inside felt colder than before, not just temperature, something deeper, like the building was exhaling slowly through its bones. And then I heard it again. Footstep. Pause. Footstep. Not random, not scattered. Walking directly inside the conveyor hall. My flashlight clicked on, and the beam cut through the darkness like a weak blade. Dust floated in the air, thick, undisturbed. At least, it should have been undisturbed. But now there were marks on the floor. Fresh ones. That was my first open loop of the night. I followed them without thinking. Each step I took felt louder than the sound I was chasing. The corridor stretched longer than I remembered. That was the first thing that felt wrong. I had walked this path yesterday, but today it seemed extended, like the factory didn't want me to reach the end too quickly. The footsteps continued ahead of me. Still slow, still human. That was the worst part, because machines don't walk like that. Halfway down the corridor, I saw something that made my chest tighten. A single boot print, then another, barely visible, but fresh enough that the dust hadn't settled back into them. I whispered without meaning to, "Someone is actually in here." My voice sounded weak, not brave, not controlled, just small. The footsteps stopped. That was the first real silence. Not empty silence, waiting silence. I turned off my flashlight instinctively. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me thought darkness would make me less visible. It didn't. Now I was standing in complete black, breathing slower than my heartbeat. And then, a sound, very close, metal scraping against metal, like something adjusting its weight, behind one of the conveyor machines. I didn't move. I couldn't. The air felt heavier, like it had filled with pressure instead of oxygen. Then the footsteps started again, but now they were circling. Not forward, not away. Around me. Slow, measured, like whatever was walking had realized I was there and decided to take its time. I turned my flashlight back on suddenly. The beam hit empty space. Just machines. Still, frozen. The conveyor belts were covered in dust again, like nothing had moved in years. But the footsteps continued, clear as day, right beside me now. That was when I saw something I didn't expect. My own shadow was slightly delayed. It moved a fraction of a second after I did. I stepped back. The shadow stayed still for a moment longer, then caught up. My stomach dropped. I whispered, "No, that's not real." But the footsteps answered me. A soft stop, right behind my left shoulder. I turned fast. Nothing, only the long corridor stretching behind me. But now the dust on the floor had changed again. Fresh marks, walking in the opposite direction, as if someone had just passed me. Too close, too real. I backed away slowly, trying to understand what I was dealing with. Security issues, trespasser, some worker hiding in here. But the factory was sealed. No one had access. No one except me. The radio suddenly crackled. I almost dropped it. A voice came through, but not the supervisor. It was softer, calmer, almost familiar. "Why did you stop following?" My throat went dry. Who is this? Static, then silence. Then the footsteps started again. But now they weren't behind me. They were ahead, leading me deeper into the conveyor hall. That was the second open loop. Against every instinct, I followed, because curiosity is louder than fear when it's quiet enough. The corridor opened into the main conveyor section. Long metal lines stretched across the room like sleeping veins. And there, something new. The conveyor belts were moving. Slowly, not powered, not mechanical, just moving, like something invisible was pulling them forward. I stepped closer, light shaking in my hand, and then I saw the footprints again. They were now on the conveyor belt itself, walking across it, step by step, across moving metal. Impossible. I whispered, "This can't be happening." The footsteps stopped again, right in the center of the conveyor hall. Everything went still. Even the machines stopped their faint vibration. Total silence. Then, a single sound. Breathing. Not mine. Not through the radio. Somewhere in the room. Low. Controlled. Like someone trying not to be heard. I turned slowly. The flashlight beam crossed the far end of the hall. And I saw it. A shape, standing between two machines. Not fully visible. Just the outline of something human. But too still. Too patient. Like it had been standing there long before I arrived. My body told me to run. But my mind kept searching for details. Because there was something wrong with the silhouette. It wasn't fully formed. Edges flickering. Like it couldn't decide where it belonged in space. Then it moved. Just slightly. A tilt of the head. And I heard the footsteps again. Coming from it. But also around it. From everywhere. I stepped back. One step. Then another. The conveyor hall reacted. The machines started moving again. Not randomly. Synchronizing. Like they were responding to my movement. The breathing grew louder. And the shape raised an arm. Pointing. Not at me. At the corridor behind me. I didn't want to look. But I did. And that was my mistake. The corridor was no longer empty. Footprints filled it completely now. Hundreds, all walking toward me. Slow, careful, like a crowd moving in silence. My flashlight flickered once, then again. The shape ahead spoke for the first time. Not loudly, not even clearly. Just a sentence carried through metal and air. "You already followed us once." My chest tightened. "What does that mean?" I whispered. No answer. Only footsteps. Closer now. Behind me too. I turned again. And saw it. The footprints were circling me completely. A ring forming in dust and silence. No bodies. Only movement. Only presence. I stumbled backward until my shoulder hit a machine. Cold metal snapped me back into focus. And suddenly the shape was gone. But the footsteps remained. All around me. Like the factory itself had learned how to walk. My radio clicked again. One final message. Not calm this time. Not soft. Just direct. Do not break the pattern. Then silence. And in that silence, I understood something I didn't want to understand. The footsteps weren't following me. They were matching me. Every movement I made. Every pause I took. Every breath. The factory was learning. And I was teaching it. I backed out of the conveyor hall slowly, refusing to run now. Because running felt like permission. And I wasn't ready to give it that. But as I reached the doorway, I saw one last detail that made my skin go cold. My footprints on the way in were no longer mine. They were slightly larger, and walking ahead of me, deeper into the factory, like something had already taken my place and continued the shift without me. I stepped outside into the night air, but the relief didn't come. Because from inside the factory, the footsteps didn't stop. They just became quieter, more organized, like a system settling into routine. And as I stood there, watching Hollow Ridge breathe in silence again, my radio turned itself on one last time and whispered something that didn't sound like a warning anymore. It sounded like an introduction. Second shift accepted. The logbook was already open when I entered the room. I swear I didn't touch it. That was the first thing that made my hands go cold. Because I locked this room behind me last time. I remember the sound of the latch clicking shut. I remember standing outside it for a second, telling myself not to come back here unless I had to. And yet now, the book was sitting exactly in the center of the desk. Open, waiting, like it had been read recently. The air inside the supervisor's office felt different too, heavier, not dusty like before, more like someone had been breathing in here for a long time without opening a window. My flashlight swept across the room slowly. Nothing moved, but I still felt watched. That feeling again, the same one from the conveyor hall, not fear exactly. Awareness, like something is noticing you notice it. I stepped closer to the desk. The logbook page was already turned to a new entry. Fresh ink. Impossible. The last time I was here, it ended 3 years ago. I saw it myself. But now there was a new line written below it. And it wasn't old. It looked recent. Shift continues. No termination recorded. My throat tightened instantly. I whispered, "That's not possible." Because factories don't keep writing after they shut down. People do. Or something pretending to. That was the first open loop. I flipped the page slowly. Another entry. Different handwriting. But still the same structure. Short, controlled, like someone trying not to waste words. Workers remain on schedule. Supervisor still present. My flashlight flickered once. Not a power issue. A hesitation. Like even the light didn't want to stay steady. I turned slightly. The office door was still open behind me. but the hallway outside looked darker than before. Not just dim, deeper, like it had extended while I wasn't looking. I forced myself to breathe slowly. This is just old paperwork, I muttered, old systems looping. But my voice didn't sound like it believed me. I turned another page and stopped because this entry had a timestamp. Today, that was impossible. And below it, a name. Supervisor R. Malik. The same name on the original records. But this entry wasn't about reporting work. It was about continuing it. Do not allow shift interruption. Observation confirmed. My stomach dropped a little. Observation. By who? I looked around the room again, slower this time. The second chair was still there, but now it was slightly angled toward me. I didn't remember moving it. I stepped back without thinking, and that's when I heard it. A pen scratching. Soft. Behind me. I froze, because I was alone in the room. I turned slowly. Nothing there. Only the desk. Only the logbook. But the sound continued. Scratch, scratch, pause, scratch. Like someone writing while watching me stand there. I swallowed hard. Is someone there? I asked quietly. No answer. Just the writing sound stopping instantly. Silence hit harder than noise. Then the logbook page turned on its own. Slow. Careful. Like a hand was doing it very gently. My flashlight locked onto it. New entry. This one longer. Different tone. Almost tired. Night guard has arrived. He sees too much too early. My chest tightened. Too early. I haven't even finished my first full shift. I stepped closer without realizing it. The words kept coming. Not appearing. Already there. Like they had been waiting under the page. Recommend delay in awareness cycle. My mind repeated those words again and again. Awareness cycle. What cycle? I looked at the clock on the wall. It wasn't moving. That was new. It had been working yesterday. I'm sure of it. Now the second hand was frozen at 3:07. My radio suddenly clicked on. I didn't touch it. A voice came through. Not the supervisor this time. Not the comm system voice. This one sounded closer. Like it was in the same room. Supervisor log must remain uninterrupted. I spun around instantly. Nothing, but the air behind me felt disturbed. Like something had just stepped away from where I wasn't looking. The logbook flipped another page. Faster this time. Almost impatient. New entry. Why does he keep looking at the door? My skin went cold. Because I hadn't said anything about the door. I turned my head slightly. The office door was now closed. I didn't remember it closing. Another scratch sound. The pen again. Writing without stopping. Do not let him reach level 2 yet. That was the second open loop. My hands started shaking. Level 2, I whispered. The logbook responded immediately. Not verbally. In writing. As if answering me directly. Below conveyor hall. My flashlight shook. Because I hadn't told anyone about the elevator. And I hadn't even been to level 2. But the logbook already knew I would go. I backed away slowly, trying not to make noise, trying to convince myself this was some automated system glitch, old industrial recording system, something stuck in loop mode. But then I saw something worse. The previous entries were changing. Right in front of me, the ink shifting slightly, updating, like it was alive. My breathing got uneven. "No," I said under my breath. "This is not real." The logbook paused, then wrote one final line. Slow, deliberate, like it wanted me to read it carefully. "You are now part of the shift record." The lights in the office dimmed instantly. Not off, just lower, like the room itself had accepted something. I stepped toward the door fast. Too fast. The chair behind the desk scraped slightly. I stopped immediately. It moved. Not fully. Just a small adjustment. Like it had been sat in. I didn't look back again. I opened the door and stepped into the corridor. And that's when I saw something that made my mind go quiet. The corridor outside the office had changed. The walls were closer. Metal panels now lined both sides where concrete used to be. The factory was rearranging itself. Slowly, while I wasn't watching, I started walking faster. The radio crackled again, but this time the voice was different. It sounded like mine. Supervisor log updated. Night guard acknowledged. I stopped walking, because I never said that. The voice continued. Calm. Exact. Like a recording of my own thoughts. Shift continuity confirmed. That was the third open loop. I broke into a fast walk. The conveyor hall was ahead. But I didn't want to go there. I just wanted out. Out of this building. Out of this system. But the hallway didn't cooperate. It stretched again. Longer than before. And the footprints on the floor appeared ahead of me. Walking in my direction. Matching my speed. I slowed down. They slowed down. I stopped. They stopped. My stomach turned. Because it wasn't following me anymore. It was mirroring me. Exactly. I whispered, "What are you?" No answer. Only silence. And then, from somewhere deep inside the factory, the logbook voice returned through the radio again. But softer now. Almost patient. "You are doing well for your first recorded shift." I backed up slowly. My back hit the wall. Cold metal. Real. At least that part was real. I closed my eyes for half a second. Just to reset. When I opened them again, the corridor lights were slightly brighter. And the footprints were gone. Relief hit me for a moment. Small. Fragile. Then I saw it. On the wall in front of me. Fresh writing. Not on paper. On metal. Scratched into the surface. Same handwriting as the logbook. Supervisor remains on duty. I stepped back instantly. Because that line was new. And below it, another line was forming. Slowly. As if being written right now. Supervisor is watching you read this. My flashlight flickered. Once. Twice. Then steadied. But in that brief darkness between flickers, I saw something standing at the end of the corridor. Not fully formed. Just a silhouette again. Same presence as before. But closer now. Much closer. And this time, it didn't point. It just waited. Like it already knew I would keep walking toward it. My radio gave one last quiet message. Almost gentle. Supervisor log complete for this cycle. Then silence. I stood there for a long time, not moving. Because I understood something I didn't want to understand. The factory wasn't just recording shifts. It was assigning them. And I had just been written into the next one. Behind me, the logbook room door clicked shut on its own. Soft. Final. And from inside the corridor ahead, the footsteps started again. The lights weren't supposed to work. That's what I kept telling myself as I stood outside Hollow Ridge Factory, watching the security poles flicker one by one across the yard. Left to right, like someone walking, but there was no one there. Only the fog, only the steel skeleton of the factory. And yet the lights kept moving. Click, pause, click. I felt my stomach tighten, because patterns like that don't happen by accident. Not in a place that's supposed to be dead. I raised my radio slowly. "Control, do you see this?" I asked. Only static answered. No surprise there anymore. But then the static changed. It didn't break. It shifted, like something had tuned into me. And I heard it. Not words at first. Just breathing. Slow. Controlled. Like someone standing right behind the radio speaker. I froze. The lights in the yard paused. Every single one. All at once. Silence. Too perfect. Then they started again. But differently. Now they were forming shapes. I stepped forward without thinking. My boots hit gravel softly. Too softly. Like the ground didn't want to react to me anymore. The first shape appeared near the gate lights. A line of brightness moving upward. Then turning. Then stepping forward again. It looked like a person walking, but made entirely of light. My throat went dry. No, that's not possible," I whispered. But the shape kept walking. Across the yard. From pole to pole. Each light turning on exactly when the glowing figure reached it. That was the first open loop. I followed it. I don't know why. Maybe because standing still felt worse. The yard felt bigger tonight. That was the first thing I noticed. Like the distance between the poles had stretched slightly. Not enough to prove. Just enough to feel wrong. The light figure moved toward the main factory door. Slow. Deliberate. Human in motion, but not in weight. I walked behind it. Carefully. My radio crackled again. This time, no breathing. Just a voice. Soft. Familiar. "You are late for your patrol." I stopped walking instantly, because that wasn't the system voice. It sounded like my own tone, but calmer, more confident, like a version of me that had been here longer. I whispered, "Who is this?" No answer. Only the lights responding ahead. The figure reached the factory wall, and instead of stopping, it went through it. I stepped back. My chest tightened, because light doesn't pass through steel. But this did. The wall flickered slightly where it passed, like reality forgot how to hold shape for a second. Then everything stabilized again, except now the figure was inside. And the lights outside started moving again. Faster. Now 2 figures. Then 3. All walking different paths. Across the yard. Perfectly timed. Like a choreographed system. I felt my mind trying to label it. Electrical fault, automated system glitch, reflection error. But none of those explained the movement, or the coordination, or the way they reacted to me watching. Because when I stepped left, one of the light figures turned toward me. That was the second open loop. I stopped. It stopped, not facing me fully, just angled, like it knew I existed. I slowly raised my flashlight. My hands were shaking now. The beam cut across the yard, but it didn't touch the figures. It passed through them. No shadow, no reflection, just light moving without resistance. My stomach dropped further, because if it wasn't physical, Then what was it responding to? The radio clicked again. Observation phase active. I turned instantly. Nothing behind me. Only the fence. Only fog. But the voice continued. Calm. Measured. You are now being mapped. Mapped. That word hit harder than it should have. Because I suddenly noticed something I hadn't before. Every time I moved, a new light turned on exactly where I stepped. Not ahead. Not randomly. Behind me. Following. Tracking. I backed up slowly. One step. Then another. The lights behind me responded instantly. Step for step. Matching me. Perfectly. That was the third open loop. My breathing got heavier. I turned toward the factory again. The figures inside were now visible through the windows, moving along corridors. But now they weren't just walking. They were repeating movements. My movements. I lifted my arm slightly. Inside, one figure lifted its arm too. I turned my head sharply. Inside, a figure turned its head. My blood ran cold. No, no, no. I stepped back again. The entire yard responded. Every light in sequence. Like the factory had learned my body language. Like it was studying me in real time. Then something changed. One of the figures stopped copying. It moved differently. Not random. Intentional. It pointed. Not at me. At the control booth near the gate. I hadn't noticed it before. A small structure. Old glass. Barely visible through fog. And inside, a light was already on. That was wrong. Because I hadn't turned it on. I walked toward it slowly. Each step now triggering more lights. Behind me. Around me. Ahead of me. The yard was fully awake now. Not randomly lit. Structured. Like a diagram of my movement. The control booth door was slightly open. Of course it was. It always seems slightly open in places like this. I pushed it gently. Inside smelled like burnt metal and cold dust. Screens flickered weakly. Not showing camera feeds. Not showing controls. Just a single looping image. The yard. From above. And a dot. Moving. Me. I stepped closer. The map zoomed in slightly on its own. That was the fourth open loop. My dot wasn't alone. Smaller dots surrounded it, moving in the same rhythm as my steps. I whispered, "This is impossible." But the screen reacted. Text appeared. No keyboard input. No touch. Just writing itself. Synchronization complete at 78%. My throat tightened. 78%. Something was still incomplete. Something still changing. The radio in my pocket buzzed violently. I grabbed it, but the voice wasn't coming from it anymore. It was coming from the control booth speakers, from the walls, from everywhere at once. "You are improving." I stepped back fast. The lights outside suddenly shifted pattern. Not random. Not mirrored. Something new. A circle forming. Around the control booth. Around me. I realized it instantly. The system wasn't copying me anymore. It was containing me. I ran out of the booth. The second I stepped outside, the circle tightened. Lights closing in. Pole by pole. Like a boundary forming around my existence. The figures inside the factory stopped moving. All at once, every single one turned toward me. Not walking now. Watching. The radio crackled one last time. Soft, final, subject integrated into night cycle preparation. My legs felt weak. I looked around. Nowhere to go. The lights had formed a perfect perimeter. And inside that perimeter, I saw something that made my mind hesitate. A shadow, not made of light, but standing inside the pattern, watching me, still, real, unlike everything else. And it raised its hand slightly, not waving, not pointing, just acknowledging, like it had been waiting for me to notice it. The lights dimmed for a second, and in that half second of darkness, I swear I heard it speak. Not through speakers, not through radio. Directly, close, now you are visible. Then the lights came back, and I was alone again. But the pattern was no longer around me. It was inside me, following every small movement I made. Even the thought of moving felt recorded now. I slowly backed away from the yard. The factory doors behind me closed on their own. No sound, just finality. And as I turned to leave, I saw one last thing in the glass reflection of the gate. A light behind me, walking exactly where I walked, matching me perfectly, except I wasn't the one casting it anymore. And as I stepped into the fog outside Hollow Ridge, the radio turned itself on one final time, whispering something that made my skin go cold. Next phase requires full occupancy. The elevator wasn't there yesterday. I'm sure of it. I stood in front of the metal cage doors, flashlight shaking slightly in my hand, trying to convince myself I had just missed it before. But deep down, I knew the truth. Things don't just appear in Hollow Ridge Factory. They wait until you're paying attention. Then they decide to exist. The button was already glowing. Soft yellow, patient, like it had been pressed long before I arrived. I didn't touch it. At least, I told myself I didn't. But the door still opened. Slow, metal grinding against metal. A sound that felt too tired to be mechanical. Inside was darkness. Not normal darkness. This was deeper, denser. Like the elevator wasn't just empty. It was unfinished. That was the first open loop. My radio crackled once. No voice. Just static breathing again. I stepped inside before I could stop myself. The floor was cold steel. Too cold. Like it hadn't been used in years, or maybe ever. The doors stayed open behind me for a moment longer than they should have. Waiting. Then they closed. Not fast. Not slow. Just final. And that's when I noticed something that made my chest tight. There was no panel of buttons inside. No controls. No emergency stop. Only one small indicator light above the door. Already lit. Pointing down. I whispered, "This is not right." My voice sounded too small inside that metal box. The elevator responded. It started moving. Down. No warning. No vibration. Just a smooth, impossible descent. That was the second open loop. I grabbed the rail instinctively. But the moment I did, I felt something else. A faint vibration in the walls. Not from movement. From presence. Like the elevator was surrounded by something that knew I was inside it. The light above the door flickered. Once, then steadied. The number panel appeared. But it wasn't numbers. Just symbols. Shifting. Unreadable. Like the system was trying to decide what reality it wanted to show me. I swallowed hard. "Where is this going?" I whispered. No answer, only the feeling of falling deeper without speed. That's the only way I can describe it. Like I wasn't descending through floors. I was descending through layers of something else. Time maybe. Or memory. The third open loop came when I looked at the walls. Scratches. Fresh. Not rust. Not damage. Words. Carved into the metal from inside. I leaned closer, flashlight trembling. The words weren't random. They were structured. Like notes. Level 1 observed. My breath stopped for a second. Observed by what? Before I could think further, the elevator jolted slightly. Not upward. Not downward. Just awareness. Like it noticed I was reading. Then more writing appeared beside it. Not carved. Just forming. Subject aware. My throat went dry. I stepped back instantly. The elevator lights dimmed for half a second. And in that half second of darkness, I felt it. Something else inside the elevator with me. Not touching. Not visible. But occupying space. I held my breath. The doors didn't open. The descent continued. Slower now. Like it was adjusting to me. I forced myself to speak. If this is some kind of system test, stop it, I said. My voice cracked slightly. Nothing responded. But the walls did. New writing appeared. Closer this time. You are not the first to request termination. That hit differently. Because it wasn't threatening. It was factual. Like it had recorded it before. That was the fourth open loop. The elevator suddenly slowed. Not stopping. Just pausing. Like it was deciding whether I was allowed to continue. Then it resumed. Faster. Now the descent had rhythm. Not mechanical rhythm. Intentional rhythm. Like breathing. In. Out. In. Out. I started counting the seconds. But the pattern didn't match time anymore. It matched me. Every time I blinked, it adjusted. Every time I moved, it responded. I stopped moving. And it slowed again. That was when I understood something I didn't want to understand. This elevator wasn't carrying me down. It was studying me while I went down. The radio in my pocket turned on by itself. I didn't touch it. The voice that came through was different now. Not supervisor. Not system. Not even mine. It sounded like multiple voices layered into one. Calm. Unnatural. You are entering recorded depth. My hands tightened on the rail. Recorded depth, I whispered. Static answered me like laughter. The elevator lights flickered again. And suddenly, the metal walls became transparent for a fraction of a second. Just a flash. But enough. I saw outside. And there were no floors passing. No structure. Only darkness filled with faint outlines of machinery that shouldn't exist. Like the factory was built downward into something that was never meant to be seen. I stepped back fast. Stop, I said louder now. Stop the elevator. No response. Only descent. Then a soft chime. Not arrival. Recognition. A small panel appeared above the door. For the first time, text formed clearly. Level REACHED. The doors didn't open, but I felt it immediately. The air changed. Heavier, wetter, like I had moved below something that still had pressure above it. The elevator paused. That was the fifth open loop. Then continued. Down again, but slower now. Like it was cautious. Like even it didn't want to go further. My flashlight flickered once, then steadied, and in that steady light, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A handprint on the inside wall. Not mine, already there, but still warm-looking somehow, like it hadn't cooled yet. I touched it without thinking, immediately regretted it, because the moment my fingers brushed it, the elevator responded. It dropped, hard, just for a second. My knees buckled, and in that moment of imbalance, I heard something outside the walls. Not metal, not machinery. Footsteps, below me, walking in the direction I was going. That shouldn't have been possible, because I was going down, and nothing should be below me. The radio whispered again, closer this time. You are approaching maintenance depth. My chest tightened. Maintenance for what? I asked. No answer. Only silence. Then another chime. Level REACHED. This time the doors opened slightly. Just a crack. Cold air rushed in, and with it a smell. Oil, rust, and something else. Something like old breath trapped in metal spaces. I didn't step out, but I looked, and I wish I hadn't, because what I saw wasn't a floor. It was a corridor. Long, industrial, but twisted, like it had been built sideways into the earth. Lights lined the walls, but they weren't on. They were blinking, in sequence, left to right, like the same pattern from outside. The walking lights, only now they were underground, and deeper inside that corridor. Something was moving, slow, patient, following the same rhythm as before. My breathing got shallow. The elevator behind me made a small sound, like it was waiting, not pushing, not forcing, just waiting. I stepped back inside instinctively. The doors closed instantly, too fast this time, like it didn't want me to hesitate. The descent continued, but now I wasn't alone. I could feel it clearly. Something had followed the pattern down. The elevator lights dimmed again, and in the reflection of the metal walls, I saw it, a silhouette standing behind me, inside the elevator, not touching me, just existing. I didn't turn. I couldn't. My throat went dry. What do you want? I whispered. No answer, only the sound of synchronized breathing. Mine, and something else, matching exactly. The elevator slowed again. One final chime. Level approaching. The silhouette behind me leaned slightly closer. Not threatening, not rushing, just close enough that I could feel the space it occupied. And then it spoke, not through the radio, not through speakers, directly, soft, almost curious. You are learning the pattern now. The elevator stopped, completely. Doors still closed, but the air inside changed again, like something had accepted arrival. I didn't move, because I understood something in that moment. The elevator wasn't going down anymore. It was arriving somewhere that had been waiting for me. The radio clicked one last time, and the voice that came through wasn't calm anymore. It was certain. Supervisor shift now includes lower levels. And as the doors began to open again, slowly, carefully, I realized I wasn't stepping into a new floor. I was stepping into something that had been operating beneath Hollow Ridge long before I ever arrived. And whatever was standing behind me in the elevator was finally stepping forward too. The voices started where no sound should exist. inside a sealed room, behind a steel door that hadn't been opened in years. I stood in front of it, listening, and I knew instantly this wasn't normal noise. It was too calm, too structured, like someone was reading instructions inside a place that had no reason to have people. That was the first open loop. I raised my flashlight slowly. The metal door had no handle anymore. Just a warning sign, half melted into rust. Press room, authorized access only. But the paint looked fresh in places. Too fresh for a dead factory. And then I heard it again. A voice. Soft. Controlled. Step 1. Align the material feed. I froze. Because it didn't sound like memory. It sounded like now. Like someone was inside the room actively working. I leaned closer, my ear almost touching the metal. The voice continued. Step 2, confirm pressure lock. Another voice answered it. Exactly the same tone. Calm, unbothered. Pressure lock confirmed. My throat tightened. That was the second open loop. Because there were multiple voices, and they were responding to each other like a team. Inside a room that was supposed to be empty. I whispered, "Who is in there?" No answer, only the sound continuing. Soft routine, almost peaceful. That made it worse, because horror is never loud here. It's organized. I stepped back and looked around the corridor. Empty. No movement. But the air felt different. Like the building was leaning toward the door. Listening with me. The voices inside continued. Maintain cycle rhythm. Cycle rhythm stable. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to ground myself. Machines sometimes record old audio loops. Factories sometimes play maintenance tapes. That was the only explanation that made sense. But then the door reacted. A faint vibration. Not from inside. From the metal itself. Like something behind it had noticed me standing there. The voices paused. Total silence. That silence hit harder than anything before. Then, one voice spoke directly. Not reading instructions anymore. Not repeating. Acknowledging. There is movement outside the press room. My body went cold. Because it wasn't asking a question. It was observing me. I stepped back slowly. One step. Then another. The corridor lights flickered slightly. Not random. Timed. Like the room was syncing with my motion. That was the third open loop. I raised my radio. Static. Then a whisper came through. Not system voice. Not supervisor. Just something soft. Almost curious. Why are you listening at the door? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know how. The voices inside resumed. But now they were quieter. Careful. Like they knew I was outside. Material inspection incomplete. External presence detected. My breathing got heavier. I looked at the door again. And for a second I saw it. A thin line of light under the bottom. Like the room was not fully sealed. Like it had been opened recently. Impossible. I leaned closer again without thinking. And that's when the voices changed tone. Not louder. Not faster. Just aware. Do not open access. That sentence wasn't part of instruction. It was directed at me. My hand stopped midair. I hadn't even touched the door yet. The fact that it warned me anyway meant it knew intention. That was the fourth open loop. I stepped back fast. The corridor behind me felt longer again. Like distance was being rewritten. The voices inside the press room now overlapped. Multiple layers, not chaos, coordination. External subject remains stationary. Monitoring increases. Begin observation sequence. My flashlight flickered. Just once. And in that flicker, I saw something I didn't expect. A shadow under the door. Not moving. Just standing. On the other side. Facing me. My heart tightened. Because I hadn't seen anyone enter. I whispered hello. The shadow didn't move. But the voices answered instantly. Soft. Too soft. You are not part of the schedule. That sentence hit differently. Schedule. Again. Everything here had schedules. Shifts. Cycles. Patterns. Even voices. I backed away slowly. But the shadow under the door stayed. Watching. Waiting. Then suddenly, a soft click came from inside the room. Like a pen being placed down. And everything stopped. Total silence. No voices. No movement. Even the air felt paused. I didn't move. Because silence here never meant safety. It meant transition. Then the door vibrated again. But this time it shifted slightly. Not opening. Just unlocking. That was the 5th open loop. My instincts screamed at me to run. But I didn't. Because I needed answers more than safety at that point. I stepped forward again. Slowly. The moment my hand touched the metal. The voices returned. All at once. Not calm anymore. Not controlled. Now layered with urgency. External interaction detected. Do not allow entry deviation. Seal incomplete. The door shook slightly under my hand, like something inside was pushing back, or pulling forward. I couldn't tell which. Then I heard something new. A single voice, different from the others. Closer, calm again, almost familiar. Supervisor override required. My breath stopped, because that title again. Supervisor, the same one from the logbook, the same presence that never officially left. I pulled my hand back instantly, and the voices inside softened again, like they had regained control. Cycle stabilized. External subject disengaged. I stepped away slowly, my mind trying to process what I just heard. Supervisor override. That meant someone still controlled this, still ran it, still existed inside it. But I had never seen anyone alive in this factory. Only systems, only patterns. I turned to leave, and that's when the door spoke again. Not through voices this time. Directly, from the metal itself. You will return during next instruction phase. I froze, slowly turned back. The shadow under the door was gone. But the voices were back, quieter now, repeating again, like nothing had happened. Step 1, align material feed. Step 2, confirm pressure lock. As if I was never there. But I knew I was, because the radio in my pocket clicked one last time, and a new message appeared. Not spoken, recorded. Press room now includes external observer. I walked away slowly, but I could still hear them behind me. Not louder, not closer, just continuing, like I had become part of their instruction set. And as I reached the end of the corridor, I noticed something in the reflection of the metal wall. A figure standing near the sealed door again. But this time, it wasn't inside. It was on my side. and it was listening to the voices with me. I heard it before I saw it. A breath, not mine, not through the radio, not from the corridor, from the machines. That single sound made my stomach drop so hard, I almost stepped back without thinking. But I didn't, because once you start noticing something breathing, you can't unhear it. And Hollow Ridge Factory had just started breathing. That was the first open loop. I stood in the conveyor hall again, flashlight trembling in my hand, watching rows of dead machines that were no longer fully dead. They weren't moving like before. This was different. Subtle, like sleep. Like something inside them was trying not to wake up fully, yet failing. A conveyor belt shifted, just a few centimeters, then stopped. A press arm lowered slightly, held, then rose again. Slow, controlled, not broken, not random, rhythmic. I whispered without realizing, this isn't mechanical. My voice sounded too loud in that space, like I had disturbed something sensitive. The machines responded, not all at once, one by one. A soft hum started deep inside the factory floor. Low frequency, almost like a heartbeat trying to find its rhythm. That was the second open loop. I stepped forward slowly. My boots made almost no sound. That was wrong. Everything here should echo. But the floor absorbed sound now, like it didn't want to repeat me. The conveyor belt ahead of me moved again, then stopped, then moved again, matching something. Not time, not input, something else. I raised my flashlight higher, and I saw it. Oil patterns on the metal floor. Not random spills, not leaks. They were forming shapes, circular, repeating, like a pulse spreading outward. I felt my throat tighten, because I recognized rhythm when I saw it. This wasn't machinery malfunction. This was coordination. The machines weren't waking up. They were syncing. That was the third open loop. A loud metallic click echoed somewhere above me. I flinched, looked up fast. Nothing there. But the sound repeated. Click, pause, click. Like a chain being tested. Then silence again, followed by breathing. Closer this time. Not behind me. Inside the machines. I took a slow step backward, and the conveyor belt reacted instantly. It stopped. All of them stopped. Every machine froze at once. Perfect silence dropped so fast it felt physical, like someone had pressed pause on reality. I held my breath without thinking, because silence here always meant attention. Then, a single press machine shifted slightly, just its arm, a few degrees, like it was adjusting its focus. On me. That was the fourth open loop. My flashlight flickered, not fully off, just unstable. And in that flicker, I saw something that made my chest lock. Inside the glass panel of one machine, there was movement. Not gears, not wires, something organic, pulsing, slow, like something had taken residence inside it. I stepped back again. The machines responded. All at once, a synchronized movement. Conveyor belts shifted forward a few inches. Press arms lowered in sequence, one after another, like a wave traveling through the factory. I whispered, "Stop, please stop." But they didn't. They followed a pattern now. Not chaos, not error. Sequencer. That was the fifth open loop. The rhythm increased slightly. Not faster, just more confident, like the system had realized I was no longer a threat, only an observer. And observers don't interrupt systems. They document them. My radio crackled suddenly. I grabbed it immediately. Static at first, then a voice. Calm, almost relieved. Synchronization progressing. I froze, because I didn't speak. I didn't request anything. The machines answered instead. A deep hum filled the hall, and for the first time, I felt vibration through my feet. Not mechanical shaking. Breathing. The entire factory floor was now pulsing. In and out. In and out. Like lungs. I backed away slowly, trying to process what I was seeing. But the further I moved, the more the machines adjusted. Like my movement was now part of the rhythm. I stopped. They stabilized. I moved again. They followed. That realization hit harder than fear. I wasn't watching the system anymore. I was inside it. And it was learning me. A press machine near the far wall moved unexpectedly. Not in rhythm. Out of sequence. It lifted fully, then stopped. And for a moment, it pointed directly at me. That was new. Machines don't point. But this one did. And in that moment, I heard something I didn't expect. A sound from inside it. Not mechanical. Not metal. A faint exhale. Like something inside had just noticed me noticing it. I whispered, "What are you?" No answer. But the conveyor belts all slowed. Like they were listening. The hum softened. Then the press machine lowered again. Slow. Careful. Like it was deciding something. That was the sixth open loop. I moved toward the exit instinctively. But the hall behind me didn't feel like it stayed the same. It stretched. Longer. Deeper. Like distance was being recalculated in real time. The machines adjusted again. This time copying my retreat pattern. Step for step. But reversed. That's when I understood something that made my skin go cold. They weren't just reacting anymore. They were rehearsing. My movements. Before I made them. I stopped completely. Everything froze again. Perfect synchronization. Even the breathing stopped. Then the radio turned on by itself. Not static. Clear. A voice layered with mechanical calm. Observation complete. My stomach dropped. Because that didn't sound like a malfunction. It sounded like a report. The machines resumed breathing immediately after. Like a system returning from confirmation. I stepped back toward the corridor slowly, trying not to trigger anything. But it didn't matter anymore, because the rhythm had already been learned. Every step I took now caused machines to adjust in anticipation. Ahead of me, not behind. Ahead, predicting. That was the seventh open loop. I reached the edge of the hall and paused. The entire factory behind me was now moving in synchronized waves. Breathing, operating, alive in a way that was alive. I turned slightly and saw something that made my heart stop. A new machine I hadn't seen before. Right near the center. Its panel was open. Inside, no gears. No wires. Just something dark, pulsing slowly. And when I looked at it, it pulsed faster, matching my heartbeat. I whispered, "This is impossible." The machine responded instantly. Its pulse stabilized, like it was correcting itself to match mine again. I stepped away slowly, And for the first time, the machines didn't follow. They stayed still, waiting. That silence felt worse than movement, because it meant attention had shifted, not away from me, toward me. Then the radio spoke one final time. Soft, close, almost like it was standing beside me. Breathing phase integrated successfully. I closed my eyes for a second. Just one. When I opened them again, the entire factory had shifted orientation. The machines were no longer facing randomly. They were facing me. Every single one. Perfect alignment. And in that moment, I realized something I didn't want to realize. They weren't breathing because they were alive. They were breathing because I was inside their system now. And I was the new rhythm they were learning. Behind me, something exhaled. Slow, close, patient, like it had been waiting for me to notice it was always there. And for the first time, I didn't turn around. The factory didn't shut down. It just changed what it was building. That thought hit me like a slow air in the chest as I stood at the edge of Hollow Ridge, watching the machines breathe behind sealed glass, still moving even after everything I believed about them had broken. Because now I understood something I didn't want to understand. This place was never abandoned. It was just repurposed. That was the first open loop. My radio stayed silent for a long time after the last message. Too long. No static, no whisper, nothing. And that silence felt intentional. Like even the system had decided I didn't need instructions anymore. Only observation. I took a step backward from the factory wall. Just one step. And the lights inside responded instantly. Not flickering. Not reacting late. Immediately. As if they were connected to my muscles now. That realization made my skin tight. I didn't turn my head fully, but I saw it in reflection. Every movement I made was already mirrored inside. Machines shifted slightly. Conveyor belts adjusted. Press arms aligned. Not copying. Preparing. That was the second open loop. I whispered to myself, this isn't a factory anymore. My voice sounded weak, even to me. And for the first time, the factory answered without delay. Not through radio, not through speakers, through the building itself. A low, calm tone spread through the metal walls. Production continues beyond shutdown parameters. I froze, because that sentence didn't feel like a malfunction. It felt like policy, like this place had rules that never expired. I walked slowly along the outer wall, flashlight barely steady in my hand. The fog outside was thicker now, but the factory inside was clearer than ever, like it wanted to be seen. And I noticed something new. Every machine I could see through the windows wasn't doing the same work anymore. Some were moving slowly, repetitively. Some were still. Some were writing. Not on paper. On metal. On surfaces. On anything they could reach. That was the third open loop. I pressed closer to the glass and saw it clearly. One press machine had carved lines into its own frame. Structured, clean, like a sentence repeated over and over. Shift continues. Shift continues. Shift continues. My throat tightened, because shifts end. That's how work is supposed to be. But this place had removed that concept entirely. A sudden vibration hit the ground under my feet. Soft at first, then steady, like something deep inside the factory had changed frequency. I stepped back quickly and saw it. The conveyor hall lights all dimmed at once. then returned, but differently, now forming arrows, pointing inward, toward the center of the factory. That was the fourth open loop. The factory was no longer just operating. It was directing, guiding movement. I didn't want to go inside again, but something inside me already knew I would. Not because I was forced, but because everything around me was now organized around that decision. Even my hesitation felt accounted for. I moved through the main gate slowly. It opened before I touched it. Of course it did, like it already knew the timing. Inside, the air felt heavier, but not dead. Active, like breathing had become part of the structure itself. Machines continued their rhythm, but now I noticed something disturbing. They weren't just synchronized anymore. They were adapting. Every time I changed direction, a section of machines adjusted angle slightly. Every time I stopped, they stabilized, like they were waiting for me to choose the next instruction. That was the fifth open loop. I walked toward the conveyor hall again. My footsteps were softer now, almost absorbed by the floor. And that scared me more than sound ever could, because silence usually means absence. But here it meant acceptance. The machines ahead of me were no longer chaotic. They were organized in rows, clean alignment, perfect spacing, like something had finalized their arrangement. I stopped at the edge of the hall and saw it, a new structure, not installed before. A central platform formed from connected machines, rising slightly above the floor. And above it, a rotating mechanism I hadn't seen in any blueprint. It wasn't cutting anything. It wasn't pressing anything. It was assembling movement itself. That was the sixth open loop. I stepped closer slowly, and the machines reacted instantly. Not aggressively, respectfully. They paused, like a system acknowledging presence. The platform began moving slightly as I approached. Not randomly, guided, centered on me. I felt my breath slow without control, my mind trying to classify what I was seeing. But nothing fit anymore. Factory, manufacturing, production. None of those words made sense now, because nothing was being made in the way I understood. I whispered, "What are you building here?" The system responded instantly. "Continuity structure." I blinked. Continuity of what? Silence. Then the machines moved again. And for the first time, I saw what they were producing. Not objects, not materials, patterns, rhythms, sequences, everything I had experienced since my first night. Footsteps, lights, voices, breathing, they were all here, encoded, rebuilt. That was the seventh open loop. I stepped back instinctively, and the machines followed that step. Not forward, not backward. They adjusted the entire hall layout slightly to match my retreat, as if my position defined the factory's shape. That's when I understood something that made my stomach drop. The factory wasn't producing items. It was producing behavior, replication, repetition, continuity, and I was part of the latest input. A soft sound came from behind me. Not loud, not sudden, just present. I turned slowly and saw the elevator indicator above the far wall light up. Again, downward arrow, still active, still waiting. That was the eighth open loop. But this time I didn't move, because I realized something worse. The elevator wasn't calling me anymore. It was offering return. A cycle completion point. A reset. The machines behind me began to slow. Not stopping, just stabilizing, like they had reached completion. The platform in the center dimmed slightly, and I felt it. A shift in attention, not away from me, towards something deeper, something below. The radio in my pocket turned on one last time, but the voice wasn't layered anymore, wasn't system-like. It was simpler, calmer, almost final. Production cycle ready for next operator. My chest tightened. Next operator, I whispered. No answer, just silence. Then the machines all stopped at once. Perfect synchronization again. And in that silence, I realized the final truth. The factory never needed to shut down, because it didn't depend on electricity alone. It depended on presence. Operators, observers, participants. And now, I was the only one left. The elevator light flickered once more in the distance. Still waiting, still going down. But I didn't feel like going down anymore, because I understood what down meant now. It wasn't depth, it was continuation. And behind me, very softly, something inside the machines exhaled, like it was finally ready to take over the next shift without me. I stepped back toward the exit slowly, but the factory didn't resist. It didn't chase. It didn't force. It simply adjusted, accepting that I had already completed my role. As I reached the gate, I looked back one last time. The entire factory was still. Not dead. Not alive. Waiting. And for a moment, I saw something I didn't expect. A figure standing on the central platform. Perfectly still. Watching me leave. Not angry. Not surprised. Just familiar. Like it had been me all along. And as I stepped into the fog outside Hollow Ridge, for what I hoped was the last time, my radio turned itself on one final moment and whispered something that made my hands go cold again. Operator transfer pending next shift cycle. Then silence, but I still hear the machine sometimes. Not running, not braking, just breathing, waiting for the next time someone new believes the factory is empty. I should have said no the moment I saw the name. Blackwell Yard. Just the way the supervisor said it made my stomach tighten a little. Like he was handing me something he didn't want to touch himself. That was the first open loop. He slid the file across the table without looking at me properly. Night patrol, quiet sight, easy shift, he said. Easy. That word didn't belong with the way his fingers tapped the desk too fast. I picked up the file anyway. Inside was a map of an industrial yard. Huge, empty, too many blind corners. And one sentence written in red ink across the top page. No second shift assignment. I frowned. What does that mean? He didn't answer. Just pushed a key toward me. Cold metal, slightly rusted. Like it had been held too long. You report at 11 p.m., he said. Don't be late. I almost laughed. That's it, no briefing. He finally looked at me. And I wish he hadn't, because his eyes looked tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. Like something had been watching him for too long. That site doesn't need briefing, he said quietly. It needs compliance. Then he stood up and walked out before I could ask anything else. That was the second open loop. I sat there alone with the file for a long time, just reading the same lines over and over. Blackwell Industrial Yard. Inactive storage zone. Minimal staffing history. And then a list of former guards. Names, but no notes. No reports. just names crossed out one by one, until only one entry remained uncrossed. Mine. I closed the file slowly. My chest felt tighter now, but I told myself it was just paperwork drama. Old site, old rumors. Every company has those. Still, I took a photo of the page, just in case. At exactly 10:47 p.m., I arrived at the gate. That's when the third open loop started. Because there were no lights. Not broken lights. No lights at all. Just a massive iron gate standing in the middle of fog like it had been dropped there from nowhere. Blackwell Yard wasn't just quiet. It was erased from noise. Even the wind felt softer here, like it didn't want to disturb anything inside. I stepped out of the car, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. Oil, old metal, wet concrete. But underneath that, something faint, like burnt plastic left too long in a closed room. I checked my watch. 11:00 p.m. exactly. The gate clicked. Just once. By itself. That was enough to make me stop breathing for a second. Then it opened. Slow. Not automatic fast like normal industrial gates. Slow like it was thinking about whether I was allowed in. I whispered, "Okay, that's not normal." No answer. I walked inside. The moment I crossed the gate, the sound behind me disappeared completely. Even my footsteps felt muted, like the ground had swallowed them. I turned once. The gate was closed again. No movement. No sound. Just sealed behind me like it had never opened. That was the fourth open loop. My radio turned on by itself. Static first, then a voice. Calm female. Too calm. Welcome to Blackwell Yard. Patrol route initiated. I stopped walking immediately. Who is this? I said into the radio. No response. Only static again. Then the voice returned. Same tone. Begin perimeter check. I looked around slowly. The yard stretched far deeper than the gate suggested. Rows of containers, old storage units, abandoned trucks. But something felt wrong about the spacing. Too perfect. Like everything had been placed with measurement instead of abandonment. I started walking. My boots finally made sound again, but it didn't echo. It just stopped. The ground absorbed it. First checkpoint was a guard booth, or what used to be one. A small glass structure standing alone. Lights inside were on. That was new. I didn't turn them on. That was the fifth open loop. I approached slowly. Inside, a monitor flickered. Live feed. Of me. Walking. From above. I froze. The camera angle wasn't one camera. It was multiple stitched together, tracking me from different positions. I leaned closer. The feed zoomed slightly on its own. The radio spoke again. Route compliance confirmed. My throat went dry. This is surveillance, I muttered. No answer. But the feed changed. Now it wasn't just showing me. It showed other movement. In the yard. Behind containers. Between trucks. Shapes. Not fully visible. Just shifting. Slow. I stepped back instantly. The monitor glitched. Then reset. Only me again. Walking. That was it. But I knew what I saw. I left the booth quickly. Too quickly. And that's when I noticed the first real anomaly. My footprints. They weren't alone anymore. There were others beside them. Matching pace, but slightly delayed. I stopped. They stopped. That was the sixth open loop. My pulse jumped. I turned around. Nothing there. Just containers. Just fog. But the footprints remained. I walked again slowly. They followed. Exactly. Step for step. But not touching mine. Like something walking just behind my shadow. I whispered, "This is some kind of tracking system." Even as I said it, I didn't believe it. The radio clicked again. Guard movement deviation recorded. My stomach tightened. Deviations. I hadn't deviated anything yet. I hadn't even finished one full round. But the system already knew I was being watched. Or worse, I was the one being measured. The deeper I walked into the yard, the quieter it became. No insects. No wind. Even distant city noise was gone. Just me. And the soft, patient sound of something following patterns I couldn't hear. I reached the second checkpoint. A stack of shipping containers. All locked. Except one. Slightly open. Of course it was. That was the 7th open loop. I approached carefully. Inside was nothing. At first, just darkness. Then my flashlight caught something on the floor. A security logbook. Old. Wet at the edges. I picked it up. The last entry was dated 2 days ago. But the handwriting was mine. I stepped back fast. No, I didn't write this. The entry read, "Night patrol active. Subject maintaining compliance." My hands started shaking because I hadn't even started the patrol yet. And it already had my report. The radio spoke again, but this time closer, almost inside my ear. Report accepted. I dropped the logbook instantly. It hit the ground with a soft sound that felt too loud in that silence. And then, the yard lights flickered on. All at once, rows of pale industrial lights stretching across the entire space, illuminating everything. And I saw it. The yard wasn't empty. It had never been empty. There were shapes standing between containers, not moving, just watching, not fully formed, like reflections that forgot what they were reflecting. That was the 8th open loop. My breathing got shallow. I stepped backward slowly, but the lights adjusted, following me, not turning off, not turning on, just shifting brightness to keep me centered, like I was the subject of the yard now, not the guard. The radio gave one final message, clearer than before, calmer than before. Blackwell Yard requires continuous observation. I swallowed hard. Observation of what? Silence. Then, a soft mechanical click from the gate behind me. It had opened again, but I didn't turn, because I already understood something I didn't want to understand. This place didn't assign guards to protect it. It assigned guards to become part of it. And as I stood there in the middle of Blackwell Yard, the shadows between the containers took one step closer. Not rushing, not attacking, just continuing the patrol I was hired to begin. And somewhere deep inside the yard system, something marked my first completed shift, without me ever finishing it. The gate was already open when I arrived. Not slightly, not accidentally, exactly the same gap every single night. Like someone measured it. That was the first open loop. I sat in the car for a moment, engine still running, staring at that iron gate of Blackwell Yard. Same rust pattern, same broken chain hanging loose, same thin slice of darkness waiting behind it. And every instinct in my body said the same thing. Turn around. Don't go in. But my contract didn't care about instincts. It only cared about attendance. I stepped out slowly. Cold air hit my face immediately, sharp and metallic, like breathing inside a tool shed. The fog was thicker tonight. Not natural thick, layered thick, like it had settled in sections instead of spreading. I walked toward the gate. Each step felt heavier than the last. And the strange thing was, the gate didn't react to me anymore. It didn't creak. It didn't resist. It just waited, like it already knew I would come. That was the second open loop. I reached the gap. Same size as yesterday. Same size as the day before. I placed my hand on the metal bar. Cold. Too cold. And for a second, I hesitated, because something was wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Not broken. Not damaged. Rehearsed. I pushed. The gate moved instantly. No friction. No sound delay. Just smooth obedience. That should have been impossible for something this old. I stepped inside, and the moment my foot crossed the threshold, the sound behind me changed. Not louder. Not quieter. Gone. Total silence collapsed. Even my breath felt swallowed. That was the third open loop. I turned back instinctively. The gate was closed again. Same position. Same gap. Same impossible lock. My throat tightened. I whispered, "That's not possible." No answer, but the radio in my pocket clicked on by itself. A calm voice came through. Entry recorded. I stopped walking immediately. "Who is this?" I asked. Silence. Then static. Then nothing. That was the fourth open loop. I stood there for a moment longer than I should have, trying to rationalize it, trying to find something normal in it. But the yard didn't feel like a place anymore. It felt like a system that had already started running before I arrived. I started forward again. Slow. Careful. The fog ahead shifted slightly. Not wind movement. Directional movement. Like something breathing through it. And then I saw it. Footprints. Fresh. Already inside the yard. Leading in the same direction I was going. My stomach tightened. I stopped. Looked down at my boots. Then back at the prints. They matched mine. Exactly. Same spacing. Same depth. Same angle. But I hadn't made them yet. That was the fifth open loop. I took one slow step forward. The prints ahead updated instantly. One step ahead of me. Not reacting. Predicting. I whispered, No, that's not how tracking works." The radio responded instantly. Route synchronization active. My skin went cold. Synchronization. That word again. I looked around. The containers on both sides were still. Too still. Not abandoned still. Waiting still. Like everything in the yard had already been placed in position for something that hadn't started yet. I walked deeper, and the yard started changing subtly. Not physically, structurally. Paths that didn't exist before appeared between containers. Open corridors forming where there were walls yesterday. That was the sixth open loop. I stopped again, and the footprints stopped too. Right in front of me. Perfect alignment. Like I had reached a decision point. My radio crackled. Proceed to checkpoint A. I frowned. There is no checkpoint A on the map. Static. Then the voice returned. Calmer. Closer. There is now. My chest tightened. I looked down at my phone. opened the map file I had saved, and froze because new markers had appeared. Not downloaded, not updated, already inside the file. Checkpoint A, checkpoint B, checkpoint C, all aligned with my current position. That was the 7th open loop. I swallowed hard. This system is rewriting layout data. Even as I said it, I didn't believe my own words, because systems don't rewrite reality in real time. But Blackwell Yard wasn't behaving like a system. It was behaving like memory, like it was correcting itself every time I observed it differently. I started walking again, because standing still felt worse. The fog thickened slightly as I moved forward, and I noticed something strange. The sound of my footsteps had returned, but not just mine. Another set again, behind me, perfectly matched. I didn't turn, because I already knew what I would see. Nothing, or worse, something that wasn't fully there. The radio clicked again. Guard presence confirmed. I whispered, "Guard presence, I'm the only one here." No response, just static breathing through the speaker. That detail hit me harder than anything else. Static that sounded like breathing. That was the 8th open loop. I reached a wider space between containers. This was supposed to be empty zone, according to the map. But now it wasn't empty. A single light pole stood in the center. Flickering, slow rhythm, like a heartbeat struggling to stabilize. I walked closer, and under the light, I saw something I didn't expect. A second set of footprints, but not fresh, not mine. Older, dried into the ground like they had been there for days. And they stopped exactly where mine stopped. I felt my throat tighten, because I understood something without wanting to. Someone had already walked this exact route. Same path, same timing, same pattern, and never left it. The radio spoke again, but this time different tone, almost instructional. Repeat shift sequence initiated. My heart skipped. Repeat. Silence. Then, compliance required. I stepped back slowly, and as I did, the footprints shifted again. Not disappearing, updating, like they were being redrawn. In real time, matching my movement. That was the 9th open loop. I turned slightly toward the gate behind me. Far away, barely visible through fog. Still closed, still locked in the same position. But I had a strange feeling. If I went back now, it wouldn't matter, because the gate wasn't an exit. It was a checkpoint marker, a loop boundary. I walked forward instead, deeper into the yard, and the containers began to feel closer together. Not physically, perceptually, like space was compressing, guiding, directing. The radio gave one final message before going silent again. Shift continuity established. I stopped, because that word didn't belong in security work. Continuity, not patrol, not protection. Continuity. I whispered, "What are you trying to continue?" No answer, but the fog shifted in front of me. And for the first time, I saw movement, a silhouette between containers. Still, watching, not approaching, just confirming I was following the pattern. That was the 10th open loop. I didn't run, because running felt like breaking procedure, and everything here punished deviation. So I walked, step by step, deeper into Blackwell Yard, while something behind me followed the same rhythm. And as I crossed into the next corridor between containers, the footprints under my feet changed direction. Not mine anymore. Not his. Not hers. Something else entirely. And I realized then, I was no longer checking the yard. The yard was checking me. I saw him in the glass before I saw anything else. And even then, I still wasn't sure I saw him. That was the first open loop. It happened near container row 7. A long strip of reflective metal panels used for storage alignment checks. They weren't mirrors. At least, they weren't supposed to be. But Blackwell Yard didn't seem to care what things were supposed to be anymore. I was walking past them when I noticed movement. Not ahead of me. Not beside me. Inside the reflection. I stopped. Slow. Careful. Because something about it felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain yet. My real surroundings were empty. Fog containers silent. But in the reflective panels, there was someone standing behind me. I didn't turn. I just stared. My chest tightened without permission. Because the figure wasn't clear. It wasn't fully formed. Like the reflection couldn't decide how much of him to show. That was the second open loop. I whispered, "There's no one behind me." No response. Only the faint hum of the yard systems continuing their invisible work. I slowly angled my head just slightly. Not enough to break the illusion. And the reflection shifted. The figure stayed. Still behind me. But now closer. That made my throat dry instantly. Because I hadn't heard footsteps. Hadn't sensed movement. Nothing in the real world had changed. But the reflection had. I took one slow step forward. The figure did not move. But his distance changed anyway. He was closer again. That was the third open loop. My breathing got heavier. I raised my hand slowly in the air. In reality, empty space. But in the reflection, the figure raised his hand too. Perfect timing. Perfect imitation. But not a copy. A response. I stepped back immediately. And the figure stepped forward. Still inside the glass. Still not touching the real world. But aware of it. That realization hit harder than fear. Because it meant something was observing me through reflection itself. Not physical space. That was the fourth open loop. I turned my head sharply toward the containers behind me. Nothing. No movement. No presence. Just fog. But when I looked back at the reflective panels, the figure had changed position again. Closer. Now standing directly behind where I had been seconds ago. I whispered, "What are you?" Silence. Then, a faint distortion in the glass. Like heat rippling across metal. The figure's face started to form more clearly. Not fully human. Not fully broken. Just incomplete. Like it was still loading. That thought made my stomach twist. Because nothing should load in real time in a place like this. That was the fifth open loop. I stepped sideways slowly. The reflection followed instantly. Not lagging. Not delayed. Immediate synchronization. Like it had no time gap between action and awareness. I tried something stupid. I stopped moving. Completely still. The reflection did the same. But the figure inside didn't. He kept looking at me, even when I wasn't moving. That broke something in my mind for a second, because it meant he wasn't copying me. He was tracking me. That was the sixth open loop. My radio crackled suddenly. I flinched. Static sync anomaly detected. I froze, because I hadn't touched the radio. and no one was supposed to be monitoring reflections. At least not officially. The voice continued. Calm. Clinical. Reflection layer active. My mouth went dry. Who is this? I said. No answer. Only static breathing again. That sound was becoming familiar in a way I hated. I turned back to the reflective panels and saw something worse. The figure was no longer alone. There were multiple reflections behind him, but only in the glass, not in reality. Dozens, standing at different depths, like layers of something stacked inside the reflection world. That was the 7th open loop. My legs felt slightly unsteady. I stepped back slowly, and every single figure stepped back with me, but not in sync, in sequence, like they were learning delay patterns. Adapting, the lead figure tilted his head slightly, just slightly, and I felt something in my chest tighten instantly, because that gesture wasn't imitation anymore. It was communication. The radio suddenly spoke again, but this time the tone was different. Lower, almost intimate. Subject confirmed. My body went cold. Subject, I whispered. No reply. The reflection behind me shifted again. The main figure stepped closer to the glass. His face was almost visible now. Not fully human, but recognizable in structure. Eyes too dark, mouth slightly delayed from expression, like emotion wasn't synced properly. That was the 8th open loop. I took a step backward instinctively, and the reflection reacted instantly. But this time, something changed. The figure didn't follow exactly. He stayed in place and smiled, just slightly. That shouldn't have been possible, because I hadn't smiled. My chest tightened. I whispered, "You're not me." The reflection didn't respond, but the radio did. Identity mismatch noted. I stepped back again, and suddenly, all reflections stopped moving. Every figure froze. Not static. Paused, like a system waiting for input. The silence that followed was heavier than anything before. Even the fog outside seemed to stop breathing. That was the 9th open loop. I slowly leaned closer to the glass again, against every instinct, and I saw something that made my stomach drop completely. My reflection was still there, but it wasn't alone anymore. There was a second version of me standing slightly behind it, watching me lean in. That version didn't move when I moved, didn't blink when I blinked. It just observed, like it had already finished learning me. I stumbled back immediately, heart pounding hard. Okay, no. The reflection stayed still, but the system wasn't silent anymore. The radio spoke again. Final now. Clearer than before. Mirror layer integration in progress. My breath caught. Integration. That word meant merging. Not observation. Not tracking. Merging. That was the 10th open loop. I turned away from the reflective panels immediately. Vast. Almost running. But as I moved, I noticed something horrifying. Every reflective surface in the yard. Metal panels, windows, polished machinery. They all showed him. Not me. Him. Following. Watching. Learning my movement in real time. And I realized something I didn't want to understand. The reflection wasn't in the glass. The glass was in the reflection. I stopped near a container corner, breathing hard, trying to stabilize my thoughts. But the radio turned on one last time. closer than ever, almost inside my ear. Transition required for full synchronization. I shook my head instantly. No, I'm not going anywhere. Silence. Then, the reflection in the nearest panel smiled again. But this time, it wasn't inside the glass anymore. It was slightly closer to the surface, like it was preparing to step through. And as I stood there, frozen in that realization, I noticed something behind me in the real yard. A faint shift in the fog, like something had just matched my position perfectly. Not from the glass, from somewhere else entirely. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which version of me was being observed anymore. The first thing I noticed was not what was missing. It was what shouldn't exist at all. That was the first open loop. I was sitting inside the small security office at Blackwell Yard, going through transport records like I always did after midnight patrol. Same routine, same silence, same uncomfortable hum in the walls that never matched any machine outside. Then I saw the logs, truck entries, dozens of them, all stamped with arrival and departure times. But the yard had no active transport system. Not tonight, not this week, maybe not even this year. I leaned closer to the screen. My eyes scanned the first line. Unit TR-17, delivered 01, 12 a.m., departure 01, 14 a.m. 2 minutes. Impossible. That was the second open loop. I whispered, "We don't even have TR-17 assigned." My voice sounded too small in that room. The fluorescent light above me flickered once. Just once. And the screen updated by itself. New entries appeared. I didn't touch anything. I swear I didn't. Another line formed. Unit TR-19, delivered 01, 20 a.m., departure 01, 21 a.m. I sat back slightly. My chair creaked too loudly in the silence, because now I was sure of something I didn't want to accept. These logs were not being written by a person. That was the third open loop. I opened the physical logbook beside the screen. Old paper, stamped records, same entries, same trucks, but the handwriting wasn't consistent. It changed, mid-sentence, like different people were writing the same memory. My throat tightened. I flipped back one page, then another, and froze. Every page had the same signature at the bottom. Mine. That was the fourth open loop. I stared at it. "No," I muttered, "I didn't sign any of this." But the signature was clean, confident, like I had done it 100 times, like it was routine. The radio on the desk clicked on. I didn't touch it. I hadn't used it in hours. A calm voice came through. Transport cycle verification in progress. My stomach dropped. I leaned toward it slowly. "Who is this?" I asked. No answer. Just static breathing again. That sound was becoming familiar in the worst way. That was the fifth open loop. I turned back to the monitor. And now something had changed. The logs weren't just showing trucks anymore. They were showing routes. Paths drawn across the yard map. But not normal routes. They were looping patterns. Perfect circles. Re-entering the same points again and again. I whispered, "These trucks are not leaving." The system responded instantly. "Departure confirmed." I froze. "Confirmed by who?" I said. Silence. Then, the map zoomed in on one point. Container row 3. I hadn't even been there tonight, but the system highlighted it like it expected me to know. That was the sixth open loop. I grabbed my flashlight and stood up fast. The chair scraped the floor behind me. Too loud. I stepped toward the door. But before I reached it, the radio spoke again. Quieter this time. Almost personal. Do not interrupt transport cycle observation. My hand stopped midair. I slowly looked at the radio. What cycle? I asked. No answer. Just a faint mechanical hum from inside the speaker. Like something inside it was listening instead of speaking. That was the 7th open loop. I left the office anyway, because staying there suddenly felt worse than walking into whatever this was. The yard outside was colder than before. Not temperature colder, emotionally colder, like something had been removed from it. Sound maybe, or time. I walked toward container row 3. My footsteps matched nothing anymore. No echo, no delay, just presence. And then I saw them. Truck tracks, fresh, but no trucks, only the marks, leading directly into the row. That was the 8th open loop. I followed slowly. Each container looked identical. Same rust pattern, same locked doors, same silence. But the deeper I went, the more I noticed something wrong with spacing. The containers weren't aligned. They were adjusting, slightly shifting positions when I wasn't looking directly at them. I stopped. The movement stopped. I stepped forward. They shifted again. That realization made my chest tight, because the yard wasn't static anymore. It was reacting. That was the 9th open loop. My radio clicked again. Arrival detected. I froze. Arrival of what? I whispered. No answer. But ahead of me, one container door slowly opened. Not swinging. Not forced. Just unlocking itself. I didn't move for a second. Then I stepped closer. Inside was darkness. Too deep. Not natural darkness. Structured darkness. Like it had shape. And in that shape, something sat. Still, that was the 10th open loop. I raised my flashlight slowly. The beam touched the inside, and I saw it. A truck cabin, but no truck attached. Just the driver's seat. Engine running. Steering wheel turning slightly on its own. Like someone invisible was still driving it. My breath caught, because there were no wheels. No chassis. Just the cabin. Moving like it was still part of a full vehicle. The radio spoke again. Calm. Final. Unit delivery complete. I stepped back immediately. No, there's nothing here. Nothing arrived. The cabin's engine revved slightly, but there was no exhaust. No sound source. Just vibration in the air. Then, the dashboard lit up, and I saw something I will never forget. A delivery sheet printed itself inside the cabin, slowly sliding out of a machine that wasn't there. I leaned closer despite myself, and read the top line. Delivered to Blackwell Yard operator assigned, current observer. My legs went weak for a second, because I understood what that meant. I wasn't reviewing missing trucks. I was receiving them. That was the 11th open loop. I stumbled back quickly, but the container door didn't close. It stayed open, waiting, like it expected me to confirm something. The radio gave one final message. No distortion now. No static. Just clarity. Confirm receipt of transport cycle. I shook my head instantly. No, I don't confirm that. Silence. Then the truck cabin lights turned off. Not suddenly. Slowly. like disappointment, and the container door began closing itself again. But before it shut completely, I saw something inside the darkness behind the cabin. Another seat, already occupied, watching me leave. That was the 12th open loop. I turned and walked fast this time. Not running, not yet, but fast enough to feel my breath break rhythm. And as I passed the rows of containers again, I noticed something worse. Every container now had faint engine vibration inside it. Waiting, idle, like the rest of the deliveries were still queued. And I was the only one processing them. The radio clicked one last time behind me. Very softly, almost satisfied. Transport system stable. I didn't look back, because I knew if I did, I might see my own name printed on the next delivery sheet, already forming somewhere in the yard. And Blackwell doesn't lose records. It only waits for confirmation. 3:07 a.m. That was the exact moment everything in the radio changed. Not gradually, not with warning, just that time, like the factory had been waiting for it. That was the first open loop. I was sitting in the patrol booth near East Gate, trying to stay awake. My eyes were heavy. My hands were cold. The kind of cold that doesn't come from weather, but from being alone too long in a place that doesn't feel empty anymore. The radio sat on the table in front of me. Old model, scratchy speaker, usually useless unless someone was actually outside the perimeter. But at 3:07, it turned on by itself. A soft click. I didn't touch it. I froze instantly. Then came the sound. Not static. Not at first. Breathing. Slow. Controlled. Close enough to feel wrong. That was the second open loop. I leaned forward slightly, whispering without thinking. Hello. No response. Only breathing continued. But it wasn't random. It had rhythm, like someone standing just outside the booth, waiting for me to speak again. I looked out the window. Nothing. Just fog and fence lines disappearing into gray. No movement. No source. But the radio breathing didn't match the silence outside. That was the third open loop. I reached for the volume knob slowly, then stopped, because the breathing changed. It reacted. A small pause, like it noticed my hand moving. Then, a whisper slipped through the speaker. Do not adjust. I pulled my hand back immediately. My heart started beating faster. I whispered again, who is this? Silence returned, but not fully. There was still something underneath it, like the sound was being held back. Waiting. That was the fourth open loop. I stood up and walked to the window, pressed my face slightly toward the glass. Outside looked normal. Empty yard, dim lights, long shadows. But then I noticed something small. The gate camera light was blinking. Slow, not its usual steady red. It was pulsing, like a heartbeat. That made my stomach tighten, because that camera wasn't supposed to be active at night unless triggered manually. That was the fifth open loop. The radio crackled again. This time, a different sound came through. Not breathing. A voice, but distorted, flattened, like it was being spoken through layers of metal. Shift acknowledgement required. I froze, because that phrase wasn't in any protocol I knew. I leaned closer slowly. Who are you talking to? I asked. No response. Then another voice came through. Fainter, farther away, but clearer in tone. This is night cycle control. Confirm presence. My throat went dry. Night cycle control. That department didn't exist in any manual I had ever seen. That was the sixth open loop. I looked around the booth. Everything felt slightly wrong now. Even the light above me seemed dimmer, like the room itself was adjusting to the radio. The speaker crackled again, and then I heard something that made my skin tighten instantly. Footsteps. Inside the radio. Not outside. Inside. Slow. Metallic. Walking across a surface that sounded too large to be a normal room. That was the seventh open loop. I stepped back from the radio, but the footsteps stopped when I moved. Immediately, like they were tracking my position. I whispered, "This is not real." The radio responded instantly. "It is operational." My breathing got heavier. I turned away from the desk and looked out the window again. And this time, I saw movement. Far in the yard, near container row 2. A figure, standing still, but not physically visible, only visible through distortion, like heat rising off metal. That was the eighth open loop. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside the booth. Cold air hit me instantly. Too sharp, too clean, like the air had been filtered just for that moment. I walked slowly toward the yard. Every step felt louder than it should, but no echo followed. The radio crackled again behind me. Subject is now outside controlled zone. I stopped. "Controlled zone," I whispered. No answer. Just breathing again. Back in the speaker. Closer this time. That was the ninth open loop. I turned my flashlight toward container row 2. And the figure was clearer now. Still not fully visible, but shaped. Standing between two containers. Not moving. Watching. Or waiting. I raised the flashlight slightly, and the figure disappeared. Not ran. Not faded. Just removed. Like the light itself refused to acknowledge it. But the radio reacted immediately. Visual confirmation lost. My heart dropped, because that meant it had seen it too. That was the 10th open loop. I backed away slowly, and the radio suddenly switched frequencies. No warning. No static transition. Just instant shift. Now the voice was softer. Closer. Almost intimate. "You are alone in cycle 3. I froze again. "Cycle 3, I whispered. The voice didn't answer directly. Instead, the breathing returned. But now it wasn't calm. It was irregular. Like it was standing too close to the microphone. Like it was excited. That made my stomach turn. That was the 11th open loop. I turned back toward the booth. And something had changed while I wasn't looking. The radio light was no longer red. It was green. That should not have been possible. I stepped closer slowly, and the speaker suddenly spoke again, but not through distortion this time. Clear, human, too human. "Welcome back to night shift, operator." I felt my body go cold, because I had never heard that phrase before. Ever. I whispered, "I didn't sign up for anything like this." The radio responded instantly. "You did." That was the 12th open loop. A memory flashed in my mind for half a second. Paperwork. Signature. Late night briefing. But I couldn't tell if it was real, or something being inserted. My breath quickened. I grabbed the radio and tried switching it off. Power button. Nothing. Battery pull. Nothing. It stayed on, even without power. That was the 13th open loop. Then the breathing stopped. Complete silence. For the first time since 3:07. I waited, heart pounding, and then the radio spoke one final time. Calm. Final. Shift continuation required. And behind me, the yard lights flickered once. Not randomly. In sequence. Like something had just walked past every single one of them in order. From deep inside the factory. Toward me. I didn't turn around. Because I suddenly understood something I wasn't ready to fully accept. The radio wasn't receiving signals from outside. It was reporting my position to something inside the system. And whatever was breathing on the other end was already on its way to confirm it. The first thing I noticed was that the map moved before I did. Not after. Before. That was the first open loop. I was standing inside the patrol booth again, staring at the GPS monitor. It showed my route for the night shift. Normal green line. Standard perimeter loop. But something was wrong. The line wasn't following my recorded steps. It was drawing steps I hadn't taken yet. I leaned closer slowly. The cursor blinked at my current position, then shifted forward by itself. 10 meters, then 20, like it already knew where I was going. That was the second open loop. I whispered, "That's not possible." The system updated instantly. Predictive patrol routing active. My stomach tightened. Predictive. We didn't have predictive systems at Blackwell Yard, at least not on our side of things. I checked the manual logs beside the screen. My recorded movement was different. I hadn't gone near container row 5, but the GPS line showed me there, standing for 7 full minutes. That was the third open loop. I shook my head slowly. No, I wasn't there. The screen flickered once. Then a new line appeared under my route. Confirmed presence detected. My breath slowed because I realized something uncomfortable. The system wasn't tracking my movement. It was defining it. That was the fourth open loop. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside the booth. Cold air hit me again, same as before, but heavier this time, like the yard was listening. The GPS device in my hand vibrated slightly. Not a notification. A pulse. I stopped walking instantly, and the vibration stopped too. That made my skin tighten, because it meant it wasn't passive anymore. It was reactive. That was the fifth open loop. I started walking toward the perimeter fence. Slow steps. Careful. And the GPS line updated in real time. Not following my position, but leading it. Like a guide. Like something pulling me through the yard. I looked up. Nothing ahead. Just containers stacked in silence. But the route on the screen turned sharply left, toward Maintenance Zone B. I had never been assigned there. Never once. That was the sixth open loop. Still my legs moved. Not because I wanted them to, but because the route felt final. Like skipping it wasn't an option. The moment I stepped into Maintenance Zone B, the air changed. It felt tighter, compressed, like sound didn't travel properly here. I stopped. The GPS pinged instantly. Checkpoint reached. I frowned. "What checkpoint?" I whispered. No response. But the screen added something new. A timestamp. Arrival recorded, 02:41 a.m. I checked my watch. 02:37 a.m. 4 minutes ahead of time. That was the seventh open loop. My throat went dry. I stepped backward slightly. The GPS line didn't move, but the environment did. One of the floodlights above flickered once, then stayed on longer than normal. Too long, and I noticed something strange in its light. My shadow. It wasn't matching me. That was the 8th open loop. I froze completely. The shadow stood a half second behind my movement, like it was delayed, like it was catching up. I raised my hand slowly. The shadow followed, but late, not synced, not human. I whispered, "This isn't real." The GPS vibrated again, harder this time. Deviation detected. My heart jumped. Deviation from what? That was the 9th open loop. I looked at the screen again. The route line had changed. Now it wasn't just showing where I should go. It was correcting where I had already been. The map shifted. Entire sections of my past patrol erased. Rewritten. Redrawn. Like history was being edited in real time. That was the 10th open loop. My breathing got shallow. I turned quickly and walked back toward the main path. But the moment I moved, the GPS froze. Completely. Then flashed red. Unauthorized movement detected. I stopped instantly, because I hadn't even left yet. That was the 11th open loop. A distant hum filled the yard. Low. Mechanical. Not from any visible machine. It came from everywhere at once, like the ground itself was powering up. The GPS spoke this time, not as text. Audio. A soft voice. Neutral. You are off route. My grip tightened around the device. I am en route, I said quickly. Silence. Then, the map zoomed out, and I saw something that made my stomach drop. There were multiple versions of my route, overlapping, some matching my current path, some diverging, and one that showed me walking into the center of the factory complex, a place I had never gone. That was the 12th open loop. I stepped back instinctively, but the GPS reacted instantly. Return required. The floodlight above me flickered again, and in that flicker, I saw something move behind the containers. Not fully visible, just a shape, following the predicted route line. Not me. The version of me the system had drawn. That was the 13th open loop. My pulse started racing, because I finally understood what was happening. The system wasn't tracking my movement. It was generating it. And anything that didn't match was being corrected. The GPS suddenly tightened its vibration. Hard, like a warning pulse. Then the voice returned. Closer this time. Patrol consistency failure. I backed away slowly. "No, I'm fine, I muttered. But even as I said it, I realized something worse. The map no longer showed where I was. It showed where I would still be allowed to be. That was the 14th open loop. I turned sharply and started walking back toward the booth. Vast, almost running, but the GPS didn't follow me. It stayed still, and the voice came one last time. Calm, final, correction initiated. The moment it said that, the lights across the yard flickered in sequence, one after another, from deep inside the factory, toward me, like the entire system was aligning itself. And then I saw it. In the distance, a version of me walking calmly along the official route line, exactly matching the map, exactly matching the system. But I was still here, standing outside it. That was the 15th open loop. I whispered, then what am I? The GPS screen went black. Just for a second. Then restarted. And when it came back, there was only one message. Unregistered deviation, removed from patrol cycle. I stood there in the cold silence, because I realized the most terrifying part wasn't that the system was wrong. It was that it had already decided which version of me was correct. And it wasn't the one still holding the device. I smelled the coffee before I saw the room. That was the first open loop. Not smoke, not chemicals, not rust or oil like the rest of Blackwell Yard. Fresh coffee, warm, bitter, human, and completely impossible. Because the break room I was heading toward had been sealed for years. Officially shut down. Locked. Unpowered. At least that's what every record said. But the smell kept getting stronger as I walked down the corridor. Like someone had just made it. Like they were waiting for me. That was the second open loop. I stopped in front of the door. Room B12. The paint was peeling. The sign above it was half burned out. Break area, do not enter. The kind of sign people ignore only once. I reached for the handle anyway. My hand hesitated for a second, because I realized something strange. The door looked new. Not clean. Not repaired. Just newer than everything around it. Like it didn't belong in this version of the building. That was the third open loop. I pushed the door open, and the smell hit me fully. Coffee. Fresh. Steaming. The lights were on inside. Bright white fluorescent lights. Too clean for a place like this. I stepped in slowly. The room was active. Too active. A vending machine hummed softly in the corner. A microwave beeped. A radio played low music. That was the fourth open loop. I whispered, no, this isn't possible. Because I had been here before. Months ago. This room had been empty. Dust covered. Dead. Now it looked like a full shift was happening. But there was no one. At least not at first. Then I saw the coffee machine. It was running. Fresh brew dripping into a glass pot. Steam rising. And beside it, a cup already filled. Still warm. That was the fifth open loop. I stepped closer. Slow. Careful. The cup had my name on it. Written in black marker. My handwriting. That made my throat tighten instantly. Because I didn't write that. Not tonight. Not ever in this room. That was the sixth open loop. The radio on the wall crackled softly. Then a voice came through. Calm. Familiar. Shift break protocol initiated. I froze. Because I knew that voice. It sounded like mine. But not exactly. Smoother. Like a recorded version of me. That was the seventh open loop. I turned slowly. The room was still empty. No movement. But the chairs were pulled out. Some still warm looking. Like people had just stood up seconds ago. The microwave beeped again. I jumped slightly. It opened by itself. Inside was food. Fresh. Still steaming. I stepped back. No one is here, I whispered. The radio responded instantly. Occupancy confirmed. My heart started beating faster. Confirmed by what? I asked. No answer. Only the coffee machine dripping again. Slow. Perfect rhythm. That was the eighth open loop. I walked toward the center table. 4 chairs. All slightly shifted. Like conversations had just stopped mid-sentence. I touched one chair. Warm. That shouldn't have been possible, because no one had been here. Right. That thought didn't feel stable anymore. That was the ninth open loop. The vending machine suddenly lit up. All options available. Snacks, drinks, everything fully stocked. I stepped closer and noticed something inside the glass. A reflection. Not mine. Not the room. Something sitting at the far table. That was the 10th open loop. I turned quickly. Nothing there. Just empty chairs. But the reflection in the vending machine still showed it. A person sitting quietly, drinking coffee, watching me. I stepped closer to the glass, and the reflection smiled. But no one in the room smiled. That was the 11th open loop. My breathing got heavier. I whispered, "Who are you?" The radio answered instead. "Scheduled personnel." I shook my head. There is no schedule for this room. Silence. Then the coffee machine stopped dripping. And for the first time, the room became completely still. No hum. No beep. No static. Just silence. That was the 12th open loop. Then the lights flickered once. And when they stabilized, the room was no longer empty. 3 people were sitting at the table. I didn't see them enter. I didn't hear them arrive. They were just there, drinking coffee, talking softly, like I had walked into the middle of something normal. That was the 13th open loop. One of them looked at me and nodded, like I was late. Not surprised, just late. My chest tightened, because their faces were familiar. Too familiar, like coworkers I had seen before. But I couldn't remember when or where. That was the 14th open loop. I stepped backward slowly. No, this room was sealed. One of them spoke. Calm voice. "You're early today." I froze, because I wasn't supposed to be early or late. I was supposed to not be here at all. The radio crackled again. Break compliance acknowledged. My stomach dropped. "Compliance with what?" I whispered. No answer, but the coffee cup on the table beside me slid slightly forward, like it was being offered. That was the 15th open loop. I looked down at it. My name still written on it. Steam still rising. Perfectly fresh. I reached out slowly, then stopped, because I realized something terrifying. Every person in the room had stopped moving. All of them, all at once, watching me, waiting. The radio spoke one last time. Soft, final, break complete, return to duty. The moment it said that, the room flickered. Just once, and suddenly, it was empty again. No people, no coffee, no sound, just dust and broken lights. I stood there frozen, still feeling warmth in my hand where the cup had been. But it was gone. Everything was gone, except one thing. On the table in front of me, a single empty cup, still warm, and my name still written on it. And behind me, the radio quietly clicked off by itself, like the break was never for me to enjoy, only to remember. The exit gate was right in front of me, but it didn't feel like an exit anymore. That was the first open loop. I stood there at the southern boundary of Blackwell Yard, keys still in my hand, flashlight hanging low. My shift was over. It should have been over. But the gate, it looked wrong. Same metal frame, same rusted hinges, same warning sign. Authorized exit only. Except the sign was new. Too new. like it had been replaced minutes ago. That was the second open loop. I stepped closer slowly. The lock clicked as I approached, not because I touched it, just because I was there. My throat tightened. I whispered, "That's not how locks work." No response, only the faint hum of the yard behind me. Too steady, too aware. That was the third open loop. I inserted the key anyway. It turned easily, too easily, like it was expecting me. The gate opened with a slow metallic groan. I exhaled slightly, almost relieved. Then I looked through it, and my relief died immediately, because there was no road outside, no street, no guard post, no city lights, only more yard. That was the fourth open loop. I froze. "Where's the road?" I whispered. No answer, just silence stretching beyond the gate. I stepped forward anyway, because my brain still refused to accept what my eyes were showing me. One step, then another, and then I was through. But nothing changed. That was the fifth open loop. Behind me, the gate clicked shut. I turned fast. The lock was already sealed again. From the outside, my heart started beating faster. "No, I just opened it," I muttered. I pulled at it. Hard. It didn't move. It was solid again, like it had never opened at all. That was the sixth open loop. I turned back toward where the road should have been. But the yard stretched endlessly now. Container rows, floodlights, fog, same structures, same layout, like I had never left. I walked forward, vast, trying to find an angle, any change. But the more I walked, the more familiar everything became. Too familiar. That was the seventh open loop. After a few minutes, I stopped, because I recognized something I hadn't seen before. A small break room building in the distance. Light on inside. Steam on the window. I froze. "I was just there," I whispered. But I hadn't been. Not outside. Not ever. That was the eighth open loop. My radio crackled suddenly. I flinched. I didn't even realize I still had it. A calm voice came through. Same tone as before. "End of shift protocol initiated." My breath caught. "Shift is over," I said quickly. "I'm leaving." Silence. Then, "Exit not available." That was the ninth open loop. My grip tightened. "What do you mean, not available?" No answer. Only faint breathing again through the speaker. But now it felt closer, like it wasn't coming from the radio anymore. That was the 10th open loop. I looked around slowly. The yard felt different now. Not visually, emotionally, like it had accepted me staying. Floodlights hummed in sequence, one after another. Behind me, ahead of me, all around, like a system locking in place. That was the 11th open loop. I started walking again, faster this time, trying to find any boundary. Vents, wall, anything, but every direction looked the same. Same containers, same paths, same silence. Even the sky felt unchanged. No time shift, no distance shift, just repetition. That was the 12th open loop. Then I saw it. The exit gate again. In front of me. Exactly where I had come from. Same sign. Same lock. Same position. I stopped. Slowly turned. Behind me, nothing. Just yard. No path I had walked. I turned back. The gate was still there. That was the 13th open loop. I walked toward it again. Slow, careful, but I already knew what I would find. And I was right. The gate clicked open as I approached. Not waiting, not resisting, just responding. I stepped closer and saw through it. The yard. Again. Exactly the same. That was the 14th open loop. I whispered, "This is impossible." A voice responded instantly. Not from the radio this time. From everywhere. "You are still inside shift boundary." My chest tightened. "No," I said, "my shift ended." A pause. Then, "Shift has no defined end." That was the 15th open loop. I stepped back from the gate. Hard. It slammed shut immediately. I turned around fast and froze because behind me, the break room light was on again. Steam on the window, like it had always been waiting for me to notice. That was the 16th open loop. I walked toward it slowly because I didn't have a better option anymore. Every step felt heavier. Not physically, but like the yard was remembering me more with each movement. The break room door was already open when I arrived. I didn't touch it. Inside, the coffee machine was running. That smell again. Fresh, warm, human, but no one was there. That was the 17th open loop. I stepped inside. The room looked exactly like the one I had seen before, but older now, more used, like time had been added instead of passing. On the table, there was a clipboard. I didn't want to look, but I did. My name was on it. At the top, active shift continuation, operator status, in progress. That was the 18th open loop. My hands shook slightly. "No," I signed out. The radio answered softly. "You signed in." That sentence hit harder than anything before, because I suddenly couldn't remember doing either. That was the 19th open loop. The coffee machine beeped. A cup slid forward on its own. Steam rising. My name written on it again. Waiting. Like before. Like always. That was the 20th open loop. I backed away slowly. "No more cycles," I whispered. "No more shifts." Silence. Then the lights flickered once. And for a brief second, I saw something outside the window. A version of me. Standing at the gate. Trying to leave. That version looked confused. Like it didn't understand why it couldn't exit. Then it turned its head and saw me inside the break room. That was the 21st open loop. We both froze. For one moment. Same position. Same confusion. Same realization. Then the light stabilized, and the outside version of me was gone. The radio clicked one final time. Soft. Final. Shift continuity confirmed. I stood there in the break room, breathing heavily, staring at the empty cup with my name on it. Because I finally understood the truth I had been avoiding. The gate wasn't broken. The exit wasn't missing. The yard wasn't repeating. I was, and somewhere inside Blackwell Yard. My shift had never been meant to end at all. The map was wrong. I kept zooming in and out, thinking maybe my eyes were tired, maybe the screen was glitching, but the same thing stayed there. A road that should have ended didn't, and a factory zone that should not exist still appeared on the old layer. I remember leaning closer to the monitor, my face almost touching the glass. The air in the office felt too still, like even the fans didn't want to move. On modern satellite view, the area was clean, empty, just flat land and broken soil lines. But when I switched to archived maps, something changed. A full industrial block showed up. Blackwell Yard. I whispered the name without meaning to. It didn't feel like a real place. More like something left behind on purpose. I checked again. Modern map, nothing. Old map, buildings, roads, fences, even labeled sections like storage, assembly, break zone. And at the center, a main gate symbol. That was the first thing that made my stomach tighten. Because I wasn't supposed to be looking at this. I was just a night security applicant. Temporary shift work, easy money. That's what the message said. Remote industrial watch. No physical contact required, just monitoring. But this wasn't remote. This was real space that had been erased. I printed the map anyway. That was my mistake. The paper came out too dark, like the printer had to force the ink to show it. I traced the layout with my finger. North Gate Conveyor Hall, admin block, storage rows. Everything felt normal until I noticed something small. The layout didn't stay consistent between prints. I printed it again. The buildings shifted slightly. Not much, just enough to make me doubt myself. I laughed once, but it didn't feel natural. Okay, I said to myself, printer issue. But even as I said it, I knew it was. Because I wasn't the only one seeing it. The job came with a key card. No company logo, just a black strip and a number printed in faint gray. No instructions except one line in the email. Report to Blackwell Yard. Gate A, your shift begins at 11:00 p.m. No address, no contact number. Just coordinates. And those coordinates matched the map. That was the part I didn't tell anyone. Not my friend, not my roommate, no one. Because people don't take jobs like this seriously. But I did. That night I drove out before sunset, even though my shift didn't start until late. I don't know why I went early. Something in me just didn't want to arrive after dark without knowing what I was walking into. The road to Blackwell Yard wasn't on any navigation app. My GPS kept correcting itself, like it was confused. At one point it actually said, "You have arrived," in the middle of an empty highway. No buildings, no fence, nothing. Just wind moving through dry grass. I sat there for a full minute, engine running, staring at my phone. Then I looked up, and that's when I saw it. Far in the distance, barely visible through heat haze, was a line of fencing. Too straight, too clean. Like someone had drawn it with a ruler and placed it on top of the world. I drove toward it slowly. The closer I got, the quieter everything became. Even the engine sounded softer. And then I saw the gate. Black metal, industrial heavy. Gate A. It was already open. Just slightly. Not wide, not broken, just enough for a person to pass through. I remember turning the radio down without thinking. I didn't want sound. I didn't want anything to distract me. Because something about that open gate felt like it was waiting. Inside, the yard stretched farther than it should have. That was my first real warning. Industrial yards don't feel endless. They feel boxed in, controlled. This one didn't. It felt like it kept going even when I stopped expecting it to. I parked outside the gate and stepped out. The air changed immediately. Outside was normal evening air. Inside was colder, dry still. Like the space had been sealed and forgotten. My boots made no sound when I stepped in. That should have scared me more than it did. But at that moment, I was still thinking like a worker. Check the perimeter, confirm structure, report anomalies. That was it. That was the job. I walked forward. The ground markings were faded but visible. Yellow lines guiding pathways between buildings. Everything looked abandoned. but not decayed. That was important. Nothing was broken. Nothing was collapsing. It was like the place had just stopped being used, mid-breath. I checked my watch. 11:03 p.m. Right on time. Then I heard something. A soft mechanical hum. Not loud, not close. Just present. I froze. Looked around. Nothing moved. No lights, no shadows shifting. But the sound was still there, like a machine running somewhere deep inside the yard. I wrote it down in my log. Low mechanical noise detected, source unknown. That was when I first noticed something else. The map I printed didn't match where I was standing. The conveyor hall should have been to my left, but there was only empty space. No building, just darkness stretching too far. I checked the paper again, then looked up, and for a second, I thought maybe I had turned around without realizing. But I hadn't moved. The layout had changed. I laughed quietly again, but it came out wrong. You're tired, I told myself, but my voice didn't sound confident. That's when the first shift happened. Not in sound, not in light, in direction. The hum I heard earlier moved. It came from behind me now. I turned slowly. Nothing there, but the sound had clearly shifted, like something had walked behind me without stepping. I took a few steps back toward the gate, just to reset, just to breathe. But the gate wasn't where I left it. I blinked, looked again. It was still there, but farther now. Not physically moving, just farther away than it should have been. My chest tightened. I checked my phone. No signal. Of course, I should have left. That thought came fast. Simple, clear. I should have left immediately. But instead I stayed, because I wanted to understand what I was looking at. And that was the real mistake. I walked deeper into the yard. The hum grew softer again, like it was leading me somewhere. And then I saw it. A light, faint yellow, flickering from inside a structure that wasn't on my map at all. I stopped, looked at the paper. Nothing there. No building. But in front of me, clearly visible, was a small administrative block. Windows lit from inside. That was impossible. I hadn't seen any power lines. No generators. No sound of infrastructure. Just light. A live light. I whispered hello. My voice disappeared into the space. No echo. No reply. But the light inside the building flickered once, like something acknowledged me. And then I realized something worse. My radio, clipped to my shoulder, turned on by itself. A soft static filled my ear. Then a voice. Low, calm, almost gentle. Shift worker acknowledged. I didn't speak. My throat locked. The voice continued. Proceed to station check. I slowly looked down at the radio. My hand wasn't touching it, and yet it kept speaking, like it already knew I was there, like it had been waiting for me long before I arrived. Behind me, somewhere in the yard, the hum changed again. This time, it sounded closer. I shouldn't have been able to find anything. That was the first thought that hit me when every search came back empty. No company name, no registration, no ownership trail. Just blank pages where records should have been. And still, I was standing inside it. Blackwell Yard. The name kept repeating in my head, like it was trying to anchor itself there. I was sitting in the small security office outside the gate, staring at my laptop. The screen glow was the only light in the room. Everything else felt too dark, too quiet, like the building itself was holding its breath. I opened the government database again. Typed it slowly. Blackwell Yard. Nothing. No match. I tried variations. Blackwell Industrial Zone. Blackwell Manufacturing. Blackwell Storage Complex. Each time the result was the same. No records found. I leaned back in the chair, feeling something cold build in my chest. That wasn't normal. Even abandoned places leave traces. Paperwork, ownership disputes, tax records, something. But this was like it never existed at all. And yet I had a gate key, a working access card, and a radio that kept talking like I was expected. I looked down at the card on the desk. Black plastic, no logo, just a faint number etched into it, 7. My shift number, maybe. Or something else. I don't know why, but I turned the card over again and again, like it might change if I stared long enough. It didn't. The silence in the room felt heavier than outside. Even the hum from the yard seemed distant now, like it was holding back. I opened another folder on my laptop. Old employment archives. This was where things usually show up, even if companies try to hide. Contractors, temporary worker, security assignments. I typed Blackwell. The search bar blinked for a second, then froze. My cursor stopped moving. I clicked again. Nothing responded. Then suddenly, the system refreshed itself. A single file appeared. No title. Just a date. 10 years ago. My throat tightened as I clicked it. The document opened slowly, like it didn't want to. At first, it looked normal. A staffing sheet. Security rotation log. But the names weren't names. Just numbers. And so on. Until I reached 7. My number. A chill moved through my arms. Because next to 7, there was something already filled in. Shift status active. My breath stopped. I stared at the screen, not moving. Active. Not assigned. Not pending. Active. I whispered, that's not possible. Because I hadn't worked here before. This was my first shift. My first night. But the file didn't agree with me. I scrolled down and saw something worse. Below the staffing sheet, there were notes. Supervisor remarks. Short, repeated, almost mechanical. Worker 7 has completed shift cycle. Worker 7 remains in rotation. Worker 7 did not exit facility. My fingers went cold on the keyboard. I closed the laptop fast. Too fast. The chair scraped back loudly in the silence. For a moment, I just sat there, breathing hard, staring at the closed screen like it might reopen on its own. And then the radio on the desk crackled. I didn't touch it, but it still turned on. Soft static filled the room. Then the same calm voice from before. Shift record discrepancy detected. My heart dropped. It continued. Please confirm identity status. I stood up slowly. My chair tilted slightly behind me, but I didn't turn around. Because suddenly, I felt like the room wasn't empty anymore. Like something had joined me. Just outside perception. I whispered, I am security. I'm just here for a night shift. Silence. Then the radio responded. No matching identity found. My mouth went dry. That shouldn't have been possible. My name was on the contract. I had signed it. I remembered it clearly. Black ink, standard form, nothing unusual. But now I needed proof. I opened my email on my phone. Scrolled quickly. Found the original message. Clicked in. The email loaded slowly. And when it opened, my stomach dropped. The sender name wasn't a company. It was blank, just a space, no address, no signature, only the attachment. Shift assignment file, worker 7. My fingers started shaking. I opened the attachment, but instead of a document, it showed a loading icon. Spinning, then stopping, then changing to something I didn't expect. A live feed, my own security office, from a different angle. I froze because I could see myself, standing in real time, looking at the screen, but I wasn't holding the phone anymore. At least I thought I was. I looked down. My phone was still in my hand, but the feed still showed me. Two versions of me. One watching, one being watched. I stumbled back. The chair fell completely this time. The sound felt too loud. The radio crackled again. Identity overlap detected. My voice came out weak. What does that mean? No answer. Instead, the screen changed again. Now it showed the yard outside. Empty. Dark. But the camera was moving. Slowly panning. Like something was walking with it. I backed away from the desk. My back hit the wall. Cold metal. Too cold. The radio spoke again. Worker 7, please proceed to checkpoint 2. I shook my head. No, I'm not going anywhere. Silence. Then the voice, softer now. Almost patient. You are already in motion. That line didn't make sense. But my body reacted before my mind did. Because I suddenly realized something terrible. My feet were moving. Very slightly. Like I was walking without deciding to. I looked down in panic. My boots were shifting. One step forward. Then another. Slow. Controlled. Not mine. I grabbed the desk to stop myself. My fingers clenched hard into the edge. Stop, I whispered, stop it. But my body kept trying to move forward anyway. Like the room itself was pulling me. The radio clicked again. Memory alignment required. My head snapped up. Memory what? No answer. Instead, a new sound filled the room. Soft typing. Not from my laptop. From inside the walls. Like the building was writing something. Recording something. Remembering something through me. My grip on the desk tightened until my knuckles hurt. And then I saw it. On the laptop screen. Even though I had closed it. It was open again. But the file had changed. Now it didn't say Worker 7. It said something else. Temporary observer. My breath caught. Below it, a line I hadn't seen before appeared slowly, like it was being typed in real time. You are not the first to review this file. I stepped back. Slowly. Carefully. My reflection in the dark screen flickered. For a split second, I saw someone behind me, standing just out of focus. Not moving. Not breathing. And when I turned my head, there was nothing. But the radio whispered one final line, quieter than before. Do not attempt to leave during synchronization. The word leave made my stomach twist, because suddenly I wasn't sure what leaving even meant anymore. Inside the room or outside the system. And somewhere deep in the yard, beyond the walls, the hum started again. Closer this time. Like it had learned my name. I saw the smoke before I saw the stack. Thin, gray, rising from nowhere in the dead industrial yard like the world had forgotten to turn it off. My first thought was simple. Someone is here. But that didn't make sense. No records, no ownership, no power lines, no maintenance crews. Nothing. And still the smoke kept coming. Slow, steady, like it had been doing this for years without stopping. I stood near the edge of the yard, just outside the conveyor hall shadow. The air felt colder here, heavier, like it carried old heat trapped under the ground. My radio was quiet for once. That silence scared me more than the voice. I took a step forward, then another, and that's when I saw it properly. The smokestack. Tall, rusted, industrial, half hidden behind collapsed structures that weren't on any map I had seen. It should have been dead. That was the only thought in my head. A decommissioned facility doesn't burn anything. It doesn't breathe. It doesn't produce smoke like it's alive. But this one did. And the smoke wasn't random. It was rhythmic. I stopped walking because I realized something worse. It wasn't just coming out. It was pulsing, like something inside was exhaling. I whispered, "That's not possible." My voice sounded small in the open yard. No echo came back, just that slow rising smoke. I checked my phone again. Still no signal. But now the battery icon was flickering. Not draining. Flickering. Like it couldn't decide how much power I was allowed to have. I opened my log app and wrote, "Active combustion source detected at central stack. Facility status unknown." My fingers hesitated before I hit save. Because the moment I saved it, the entry duplicated itself. Twice, then 3 times. All identical. No edits. No timestamp differences. Just copies appearing like someone else was writing alongside me. I pulled my hand back. The screen dimmed, then brightened again by itself. And for a second, I saw something behind my reflection. Not in the yard. In the phone. A shadow standing still behind me. I turned fast. Nothing there. But my chest was already tight. Because now the smoke felt closer. Thicker. Almost warm. Like the air itself was slowly heating up just around that one structure. I started walking again. Slow this time. Careful steps. Trying not to let my mind jump ahead of what I might find. The closer I got, the more details appeared. Pipes feeding into the stack. Old warning signs faded into rust. A control panel box still blinking faint green. Blinking. That was the worst part. Something abandoned shouldn't blink. It should die. But this place refused. I reached the perimeter fence around the stack. It was broken in places, bent outward like something had pushed through it from the inside. I stopped at the gap. The smoke drifted directly over my head. It didn't smell like fire. That's when I noticed something wrong with my breathing. Each inhale felt slightly delayed, like the air was arriving after I expected it. I stepped through the broken fence. Instantly, the temperature changed. Not hotter, just stable, like I had entered a sealed room instead of an open yard. I looked up at the stack. Up close, it was worse. There was no flame, no visible furnace, just a deep vertical shaft disappearing into darkness. And yet the smoke kept flowing out, steady, controlled, almost like it was being exhaled by something I couldn't see. My radio crackled again. I didn't need to check it. I already knew the voice would be there. Processing unit active. I froze. My eyes stayed on the stack. Processing unit, I repeated quietly. The radio responded instantly. Worker observation confirmed. My throat tightened. "I'm not a worker," I said. "I'm security." Silence. Then the voice changed slightly. Still calm, still flat. Security designation, not recognized at this location. I took a slow step back. The fence behind me creaked. Not from wind, from pressure, like something was shifting weight on the other side. I turned my head slightly. Nothing visible, but the smoke thickened for a moment, then pulled upward faster, like it had noticed me noticing it. That was the moment I realized I wasn't alone in observing it. Something inside was observing back. I backed away from the stack. Slow, controlled, trying not to trigger anything I couldn't understand. But my foot hit something soft. I looked down. A cable, thick black, half buried in dirt. It wasn't connected to anything I could see. It just disappeared into the ground. Curiosity got ahead of fear for a second. I crouched, pulled at it gently. It didn't move, so I pulled harder. The ground resisted like it didn't want to give it up. Then suddenly, it loosened. And the moment it did, I heard it. A sound from inside the stack. A deep mechanical shift, like something turning over in sleep. My heart jumped hard. I let go immediately. The cable slipped back into the ground slightly, like it was never meant to be exposed. I stood up fast, and that's when I saw the control panel blinking faster now. Green light, then amber, then green again, like it was reacting to me. I stepped back again, and the smoke changed direction. It stopped rising straight. It leaned toward me. I froze. That shouldn't have been possible. Smoke doesn't lean, but this did. It followed me like a gaze. I whispered, "Okay, no, no, no." I turned to leave, and that's when my radio spoke without static. Clear, close, almost personal. Containment breach detected. My steps stopped instantly. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then the voice continued. Worker 7, proximity confirmed to processing unit. My stomach dropped. That number again. Always 7. I backed away slowly, eyes locked on the stack. "Stop calling me that," I said quietly. No response. The smoke thickened again. And this time it didn't just rise. It followed. Downward. Around me. Like I was being surrounded by something that didn't want me to leave. My breathing got shallow. My hands started shaking. I turned fully now, ready to run. But the yard behind me wasn't the same anymore. The fence line I entered through was gone. Just gone. Not broken. Not moved. Removed. Like it was never there. My mind tried to reject it immediately. I stepped forward anyway, trying to find it. But every direction looked wrong now. The yard had shifted again. Subtle but undeniable. Distances didn't match. Paths were slightly rearranged. Like the world was adjusting itself after I made a decision. My radio clicked again. Recalibration in progress. I stopped walking. "What does that mean?" I asked out loud. The voice answered immediately. Maintaining operational continuity of processing cycle. My mouth went dry. "I don't work here," I said again, louder this time. A pause. Then, denial logged. Something about that word made my skin tighten. Logged. Like I was being recorded, not heard. I looked back at the smokestack. It was taller now. Or maybe I had moved closer without realizing. I couldn't tell anymore. The smoke was no longer just rising. It was forming patterns. Slow loops. Repeating arcs. Like instructions written in the air. And for the first time, I understood something I didn't want to understand. This wasn't a factory that stopped working. It was a factory that changed what it produced. And right now, it was producing awareness. I stepped backward again, slowly, trying to return to the gate, trying to undo whatever alignment I had triggered. But behind me, the smoke shifted once more, and the radio whispered, almost gently now, "Do not interrupt output cycle." The yard around me felt smaller than before. Not physically, structurally, like everything was closing in just slightly. And the stack kept burning, even though nothing was on fire, even though it had no reason to exist. And as I stood there, trapped between a moving landscape and a breathing chimney, I finally understood the real question wasn't why the smoke was there. It was what it was trying to finish. I was halfway through the security logs when I noticed something that made my hand go cold. Every night, the same names were clocking in. Not new hires, not replacements. The same workers, even though the factory had been empty for years. I stared at the screen, waiting for it to feel like a system glitch, a database error, anything normal. But the timestamps were too clean, too precise. 03:00 a.m. entry recorded. 03:02 a.m. machine floor access. 03:05 a.m. breakroom usage logged. 03:07 a.m. shift movement detected. And then something worse. The names weren't random. They matched real employees from old paper records I had found earlier in the archives room. People who officially left, retired, moved away, some even died. I leaned back in my chair, listening to the hum of the security room. That low electrical buzz suddenly felt louder, like it was watching me back. That's when my radio cracked. Just once. Soft static. Then a voice. Shift is running behind schedule. I froze. No one else was supposed to be here. I grabbed the radio. Control confirmed last transmission. Nothing. Only that same faint breathing under the static. Slow, controlled. Like someone standing too close to a microphone. I turned down the volume, but the sound didn't go away. It followed me. And that's when I decided to check the floor myself. The factory at night doesn't feel empty. It feels paused, like the whole place is holding its breath, waiting for something to resume. My flashlight cut through long corridors of rusted machines, and conveyor belts froze in mid-gesture. Everything looked normal at first. Too normal. That's what made it wrong. Because I remembered how it used to be. Loud, chaotic, alive with movement. Now even the dust seemed arranged. Like someone had cleaned it, but forgot to leave fingerprints. I reached the main production hall. The doors were already open. I don't remember unlocking them. Inside, the lights were on. Not fully bright, not flickering. Just steady, like someone had set them for work. My stomach tightened. I took a step in, and heard it. Footsteps. Not mine. Slow, measured, coming from the far end of the hall. I raised my flashlight. Nothing, but the sound continued. Metal boots on concrete. 1-2 pause. 1-2 pause. Like a worker packing a route they knew by heart. I whispered into the radio, "Is anyone on floor 1?" Only static answered. Then a new sound came in. A machine turning on. Not starting up. Just already running. I followed the noise. Past the assembly line. Past the control panels that shouldn't have power. And then I saw it. A conveyor belt moving. Slowly. Carrying nothing. Except shadows that didn't belong to anything visible. I stepped closer. The belt creaked under its own motion. And on the wall beside it was a schedule board. Fresh chalk writing. Shift progress, 63%. My breath stopped. I touched the board. The chalk was still wet, like it had been written minutes ago. Behind me, something shifted. Not loudly, just a soft fabric drag, like clothing brushing against metal. I turned fast. Empty hallway, but the lights had changed. Slightly dimmer now, and colder. I checked my watch. 03:07 a.m. The exact time from the logs. That's when I heard it again. The radio voice. Closer this time. Not static anymore. Clear. Calm. Do not interrupt active shift. I dropped the radio. It hit the floor with a crack that sounded too loud, too alive. And for a moment, everything stopped. Even the machines, even the footsteps. Silence pressed against my ears so hard it hurt. Then movement resumed, but not where I expected. Behind me, the conveyor belt had started again, and now it had something on it. A glove, old, greasy, human-sized. I didn't want to touch it, but my legs moved anyway. When I picked it up, it was still warm. Not physically warm, just recent, like someone had taken it off and left it there seconds ago. I dropped it instantly, and that's when the lights across the hall flickered in sequence. Left to right, like someone walking. I followed the pattern with my eyes and realized it was mapping movement. A route, a person-sized path through the factory. Something was walking through light. Something I couldn't see, but something the building could. I backed away slowly, my flashlight shaking now. That's when I saw the second board, hidden behind a pillar. Worker attendance log. No paper, no screen, just names carved into metal. Fresh scratches, and one of them was glowing faintly, like it had been recently etched. My own name. I swear I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. The air just stopped moving in my lungs. Then the footsteps returned. Closer now, right behind me. I spun around. Nothing, but the temperature dropped instantly, like something had stepped into my personal space. And I wasn't alone anymore. I ran, not toward the exit. I don't even know why. Just away, down corridors that felt longer than they should have been. Every turn looked slightly different than before. Doors that were open were now closed. Walls that were solid now had windows I didn't remember. And through those windows, movement. Inside sealed rooms, figures standing in lines, wearing uniforms, working, machines running, conveyor belts moving. A full shift, a full factory, but no faces, just silhouettes repeating motions, over and over, like memory loops that forgot they were supposed to end. I stopped running when I realized something worse. The exit gate wasn't ahead of me anymore. It was behind me. I hadn't just been running deeper in. I had been circling. The factory wasn't expanding. It was folding. I reached the main gate anyway. It looked normal. Chain locked. Padlock intact. I grabbed it anyway, shaking. And when I pulled, it opened. Too easily. Too quietly. Relief hit me so fast it almost made me laugh. Almost. I stepped through. Cold air touched my face. Real air. Outside air. I turned back, and the gate was gone. In its place, another corridor. Same factory. Same lights. Same humming machines. I stepped backward. Nothing changed. I stepped forward again. Still inside. That's when I understood. There was no exit. Only shifts. A hand touched my shoulder. I didn't see it happen. I just felt the pressure. Heavy, familiar. Like being assigned something. A duty. A role. A shift. The radio in my pocket turned on by itself. Static first. Then that calm voice again. You are scheduled. I dropped everything. Ran deeper. But now I knew the truth. The factory wasn't abandoned. It was always working. Just not in a way we understood. And I was part of it now. Somewhere behind me, new footsteps joined the rhythm. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, pause. And this time, they matched mine exactly. The stairwell shouldn't have gone that far down. But it did. And that was the first thing that made me stop breathing properly. I stood at the top step, flashlight pointed into darkness that didn't feel normal. It wasn't just dark. It felt layered, like the space itself had depth that didn't belong to the building. The handrail was cold under my palm, too cold. I checked the map again. Maintenance floor, basement level 1, emergency exit access. That was it. But the stairs kept going. Down, and down, and then further than down should ever mean. I swallowed hard and whispered into the radio, confirm basement structure. How many levels does this place have? Only static answered. But inside that static, I thought I heard something else. A soft breath. Close, like someone standing on the other side of the microphone, waiting for me to stop talking. I stepped onto the first stair. It creaked. Loud. Too loud for a building this dead. The sound echoed downward for longer than it should have. It didn't fade, it stretched. Like the stairwell was listening. Every step I took made the air feel heavier. Not physically heavier. Emotionally heavier. Like the building didn't want me going down, but also didn't know how to stop me. 10 steps in, I realized something strange. My flashlight beam wasn't reaching the bottom. It should have. But the light just stopped. Not faded, not dimmed. Stopped. Like there was a wall of darkness refusing to reflect it back. That's when I noticed the writing. On the wall. Scratched into concrete. Not painted, not marked. Carved. Level active. I froze. There was no level in the official plans. I traced my fingers over the letters. They were fresh. Not old damage. Recent. Very recent. Behind me, the stairwell door slammed shut. I didn't hear it open, but I heard it close. That was worse. I ran back up instinctively. The door didn't move. It didn't even have a handle anymore. Just smooth metal. Like it had never been a door at all. I turned slowly. The stairwell stretched below me again. Longer than before. That's when I understood something I didn't want to accept. The stairs were growing, with me inside them. Every step down added more steps ahead. Like the building was making space for something that hadn't arrived yet, or something that always had. I forced myself downward. 1 step, then another, then another. The air changed after step 30. It smelled like oil, old machinery, and something worse underneath it. Something like wet paper, or skin left too long in heat. I stopped again when I heard footsteps below me. Not mine, not echo, separate, distinct, walking up, slow, deliberate, like someone was coming to meet me. I raised the flashlight. Nothing, but the footsteps kept coming. Closer now. I shouted, "Who's there?" My voice didn't bounce back. It just disappeared, like the stairwell swallowed it. Then I saw it. A light below. Faint, flickering, like another flashlight, coming up toward me. I stepped back instinctively, but the stairs behind me weren't there anymore. Just more darkness. The stairwell had closed itself in. No exit upward, only down, and something coming up. I forced myself to stay still, waiting. The light grew stronger, and I saw movement behind it. A shape, human-sized, but wrong. Too slow, too steady. It climbed one step at a time. No hurry, no hesitation, like it knew I had nowhere to go. Then the voice came, not from the figure, from the stairwell itself. Shift supervisor required at level. My stomach dropped. That was English the way people spoke it. It sounded like something reading instructions. It didn't understand but was required to obey anyway. The figure stopped below me, now close enough to see. It wasn't a person. Not exactly. It wore a uniform, but the fabric looked layered, like multiple uniforms stitched over each other over time. Its head was lowered. I couldn't see a face, just a shadow where a face should be. It spoke without moving. "You are late." My body reacted before my mind did. I ran downward, past it. It didn't stop me. That was worse. It let me pass, like I was expected, like I had already agreed to this without remembering. The stairs kept going, and now they felt different. Wider, cleaner, more industrial, like I had crossed into a part of the building that was still functioning, even though nothing should be. The walls changed. Concrete became metal. Metal became polished steel. And then glass. Behind the glass, movement. Rooms. Lit rooms. Filled with people. Working. Typing. Standing. Walking. All in perfect rhythm. But no one looked at me. No one reacted. It was like I was outside their awareness. Or below it. That thought hit me hard. Below awareness. Below recognition. Below record. I checked my radio again. Anyone copy? I'm inside something not on the map. Static returned. But this time it wasn't empty. There were words inside it. Broken. Layered. Repeating. Level -3. Operational shift continuity required. My hands started shaking. I reached another landing, but calling it a landing felt wrong. It was more like a threshold, a doorway without a door. Above it, written in faded paint, "Do not enter without assignment confirmation." Below it, my name. I stopped completely. That wasn't possible. I hadn't been assigned anything here. Not officially. Not ever. But the paint was fresh. Still dripping slightly. Like it had just been written. Behind me, footsteps again. Multiple now. Coming down. Slow. Controlled. I turned. The stairwell above was full. Not crowded. Not chaotic. Organized. Figures descending in perfect spacing. All wearing variations of the same uniform. All with heads slightly tilted down. All moving like they were returning to work after a break that never ended. And I realized something horrifying. They weren't coming for me. They were going with me. The system had already included me. I just hadn't noticed the paperwork. A voice came from the wall beside me. Soft. Close. You are assigned to continuity maintenance. I pressed my back against the metal. What does that mean? No answer. Only the sound of steps filling the space around me. One of the figures stopped beside me. Not looking at me. Just standing. Then it spoke. Calm. Flat. You replace the ones who stop. My throat tightened. Stop what? The figure tilted its head slightly. And for the first time, I felt something looking at me through the absence of a face. Working. The word didn't feel like language. It felt like a rule. A law. Something the building itself believed. The stairwell shifted again. A loud metallic groan. And suddenly, the steps beneath me weren't going down anymore. They were going sideways. I staggered, grabbed the railing, but even the railing moved slightly. Like everything here was adjustable. Like the structure was not fixed, but responsive. The stairwell had become a system, and I was inside its logic now. We descended together, me and them. Or maybe I was the one being led. It was hard to tell anymore. After what felt like an hour, or maybe 10 minutes, time didn't behave properly. I saw something ahead. A door. Real this time. Heavy. Industrial. Marked. Level Operations Core. The group stopped. All at once. Perfect synchronization. Then they stepped aside, leaving me in front of it. Waiting. No pushing. No forcing. Just expectation. Like I was always supposed to open it. My hand reached forward before I decided to, and the door unlocked itself. Slowly, with a sound like metal remembering its purpose. Inside was light. Warm. Almost normal. And that was the most disturbing part. Because nothing down here should have felt normal. I stepped in. The door closed behind me without touching it. And I finally understood the truth of the stairwell. It wasn't going down. It was delivering people to where they were needed. And I had just arrived at my position. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang. Soft. Precise. Like the start of a shift that never ends. And my radio turned on one last time. Not static this time. Just a simple confirmation. New worker logged. It didn't fade out slowly. The sound just died. 1 second, the whole industrial zone was alive with distant machinery, humming wires, ventilation groans. The next second, nothing. Absolute silence. Not even wind. Not even my own breath felt like it had permission to exist. I stood still inside Level Operations Core, waiting for my ears to adjust. But the silence didn't change. It felt thick, like the air itself had been muted. I whispered without thinking, "Hello." My voice didn't echo. It didn't bounce back. It simply vanished. That's when I realized something worse. The silence wasn't empty. It was controlled. Like someone had turned everything off except one thing on purpose. Then I heard it. A machine cycle. Far away, but perfectly clear. Click, hum, release, reset. Click, hum, release, reset. Over and over. The only sound left in the entire zone. I walked forward slowly. My footsteps made no noise. Even my shoes were silent now. That should have terrified me more than it did. But my brain was already overwhelmed trying to understand the machine rhythm. It felt familiar. Too familiar. Like I had heard it before. Inside something important I wasn't supposed to remember. I followed the sound through a long corridor of metal walls. Each step I took felt lighter, like gravity was adjusting itself. The hallway lights were on, but dimmed to a dull orange. Not emergency lighting, more like resting lighting. Everything here felt like it was in standby mode, waiting for what I didn't know. Then I saw the first frozen object. A worker, standing in the middle of the corridor, perfectly still, wearing a factory uniform, head slightly tilted down. I approached carefully. "Hey." No response. I stepped closer and waved my hand in front of their face. Nothing, not even a blink. But they weren't unconscious. They were paused, like a video that had stopped buffering mid-frame. Their radio was still on. I picked it up slowly. Static filled it, but underneath the static I heard breathing. Not mine. Not theirs. Something else entirely. I dropped it immediately. The moment it hit the ground, the worker twitched. Just once. A small mechanical jerk, like a system checking if it still had input. Then they returned to stillness. My stomach tightened. This wasn't sleep. This wasn't death. It was something in between. I kept moving. The machine sound grew louder. Click, hum, release, reset. Click, hum, release, reset. Every hallway I passed had more workers, all frozen in different positions. Some holding tools, some mid-step, some looking at nothing with blank focus. All paused at different points of the same invisible cycle, as if the entire industrial zone had been captured in one single moment and held there. But why was I still moving? Why was I frozen too? That question started to eat at me more than anything else. I turned a corner and stopped, because the corridor ahead was filled with motion. Not frozen. Active. Machines running. Conveyor belts moving. Workers walking. But silently, like a film playing without sound. They moved in perfect rhythm with the machine cycle I had been hearing. Click, hum, release, reset. They all moved at the exact same intervals. Step, turn, lift, place, repeat. No variation, no hesitation, no individuality. I pressed myself against the wall, watching, trying to understand what I was seeing. And then I noticed something impossible. Every movement they made matched mine. Not exactly, but slightly delayed. Like I was the original signal, and they were copying it. My breath shortened. I took one step back. Every worker in the hall took one step forward. I froze. They froze. I raised my hand slowly. They raised theirs. Not all at once, but in sequence, like the system was copying me across a delay. My mind tried to reject it, but my body understood faster. I wasn't inside the factory anymore. I was the input, the reference point, the original pattern, and everything else was just reflection. The machine cycle clicked again. Louder now. Closer. I followed it down another hallway until I reached a large sealed room. The doors were open. That alone should have been impossible. Inside was the source. A massive machine. Old. Industrial. But still running perfectly. No dust. No wear. Just constant motion. At its center was a rotating core. Each rotation matched the rhythm I had been hearing. Click, hum, release, reset. Click, hum, release, reset. I stepped closer. The air around it felt wrong. Too balanced. Like the machine was correcting reality itself with every cycle. On the wall beside it was a control panel. No buttons, no switches, just a screen. And on that screen, my name, not as a label, not as an employee record, as a status, active node, observer shift. My throat went dry. Observer shift. I didn't choose that. I didn't apply for anything like that. I reached toward the screen instinctively. But before I touched it, the machine cycle changed. It paused, just for half a second, then resumed. But something inside me shifted with it. A memory, not mine. A memory of standing somewhere above this. Watching, measuring, recording. I stumbled back instantly. No, I wasn't here before. The words didn't feel true, even as I said them. The machine responded, not with sound, with display. A new line appeared. Memory alignment, 41%. My hands started shaking. That number wasn't about equipment. It was about me. I turned sharply toward the exit, but the hallway behind me was gone, replaced by a mirrored version of the same machine room. Infinite reflections of the same space, each one slightly different, each one deeper, each one quieter. And in every reflection, I was already standing there, watching myself, waiting. I backed up slowly. Every version of me backed up too. Not copying, anticipating, like they already knew what I would do. The machine cycle increased in speed. Click, hum, release, reset. Faster now. Too fast. My head started to ache, like my thoughts were being synchronized against my will. And then I heard it, from every direction at once. Not a voice, an instruction. Maintain observer position. I covered my ears, but it didn't matter. The sound wasn't external. It was inside the system. Inside me. The machine cycle suddenly stopped again. Silence returned, worse than before, because now I knew silence meant control. A shadow moved behind the glass wall. Not one of the workers. Something else. Taller, slower, observing me the way I had been observing everything else. It raised a hand slightly, and every version of me in every reflection mirrored it instantly. I didn't move, but I still moved. That was when I understood the real horror. I was not inside the factory. I was inside its recording system, and the recording had never stopped. The machine cycle resumed once more. Click, hum, release, reset. But now it wasn't just the factory moving. It was everything. My thoughts, my memory, my sense of self, all synchronized to something I could no longer separate from reality. I looked at my hands, and for a brief second, they weren't mine. They were just part of the system's output. A perfect loop, a repeating function. And somewhere deep inside the machine core, I heard my own voice for the first time. Calm, detached, already continuing the cycle. Observer shift stabilized.